one of our commissioners is gonna be a little late, so we're gonna table Avalon when it comes up till he shows up, and 1600, or, no, excuse me, 1210 Oscar Street, because I have to recuse myself if you want to have a call. So with that being said, we'll start the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business is the approval of minutes, and I know Deb has read them, so we need a motion.
These are the January 8th minutes.
January 8th minutes,
So
yes.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. 242-1588, 15 Regency Place, Lot 6, request to withdraw.
Commission received a request to withdraw this petition for a partial certificate of compliance. As I explained at the last meeting, the bond is tied with the previous order for the subdivision, and we can't really release the lot from that order until everything's done on that lot, so.
Okay, so we need a motion?
Motion to
Accept-
facilitate the withdrawal.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is RDA, 630 Turnpike Street.
Commission will recall at the last meeting requesting that the applicant provide a revised plan that shows all work on the site in and out of the buffer zone. The commission also discussed the potential for installing a fence at the edge of the pavement, which is up against, within the 25-foot no disturb zone. We have a revised site plan provided by the applicant that shows some hot top repair areas, no stockpiling snow signs, a proposed fence that is 6 feet off the pavement into the 25-foot no disturb zone. And as we had expected originally, is a stockade fence along the back of the property with some arborvitae in front. I let the applicant know that the fence may not be allowed further into the no disturb zone, but we can discuss that. I know he's trying to work with the owner, but the owner wanted it, off the pavement to just preserve the fence from cars driving into it, I guess.
We asked him, Amy has gone above and beyond to circle the plan and stuff that we can do, that he can do. I think we've been pretty good with the applicant. The end of the parking lot is an issue. The parking lot's in the 25, and I guess it's been there for a number of years. But he wants to put the fence 6 feet beyond that. So myself, I thought we agreed that the fence was gonna be in front of right at the pavement. And the owner is reluctant to do that. And that parking lot is in the 25. If you looked at the old pictures where they fixed, that was about 6 feet. So I mean, they just violated it's just violating the wetlands, what's left of it. So I'm very reluctant to put the fence 6 feet back. And I think that might be close to the easement. There's an easement here, and I don't know whose it is, but it might be close to the easement. So I just give it try to give it a little background. Joe?
Yeah, I don't know what the purpose of the easement is or who it benefits.
It's a water easement.
Water easement going
Yep.
up to the land up in the back? Okay. And there's a pipe in there? There is?
I'm gonna
Yes.
make an assumption that there
I mean, it's
is.
rare that you would dig a pipe up unless it was a break, but the reality is, it's in an easement, they actually, the town could actually do that. I think the conversation we were having was about a physical barrier, some way to provide that, some degree of separation between the improved parking lot that, you know, historically has been too close, and at the same token, not get those improvements that much closer to the wetland. I think the fence, Sean's not here to, I think it was Sean's idea, and it wasn't necessarily a bad one, but I don't think we got too specific exactly how far in. But, I mean, reality is, if this parking lot doesn't have wheel stops, folks pull into, people can't drive, everyone here can probably attest that. Wheel stops wouldn't even necessarily stop them, but people typically want to pull in as far as they can, and without a physical barrier, they don't necessarily know where the pavement ends. So, you putting the fence in 6 means they're gonna be right up against it, and the truth is, an overhang from your wheel to the overhang of your car is probably close to 3.5, 4 feet. So, 6 may be excessive, but I think 3 is not enough. So I think we're looking at something on the order of 4. And I'm not compromising, I'm just being practical. So if we're looking for a physical barrier to prevent it from being damaged, I think you're looking at like 4 feet. That's all I have to say.
I took it to the owner to try to get him to incur the cost for the fence, which you guys asked me for at the last meeting. And his issue is, I don't want to put a brand-new fence up and have the cars bang into it. All right, so if, 6 is a little too far, 3 is a little too short, I don't have an issue with 4, and I don't think he does either. Because we're also going to have the signs at the edge of the parking lot for the no snow loading as well. But I just, there's no wheel stops on that
It's right up-
side or
yeah,
nothing.
painted
So,
right up to the edge.
yeah, so if the fence is right there, I guarantee you, they're gonna drive into it. But if there's a little bit of a buffer zone with some, with the dirt and the fence, then I don't see them driving all the way into it. But if it's right there at the edge of the parking, I just see it getting damaged, and he has an issue paying for something that's, gonna be damaged after a short period of time. He's willing to incur the cost for the fence. It's actually a 96-foot-long fence. So, and,
Then put up a guardrail instead of a fence. Put up a wooden guardrail.
well,
I mean, I'm just-
you guys asked us to do this, we don't care if the fence goes in there or not. Okay, you guys asked us to do it, so we're trying to accommodate as well. So, I mean, if you don't want nothing there, then we'll just put the signs up, call it a day,
Well, not really.
you know?
Not really. If you have vehicles on your property going into the wetland, which is where the proposal is right now, we're not calling it a day at all. We'll be happy to issue violation notices until we run out of paper. So it's up,
The parking lot's been existing since 1984.
keep them in the parking lot. You're telling me your clients can't stay in the parking lot, they
I'm
want to
not,
drive.
I'm not saying they can't stay in the parking lot.
You just told me they're gonna, if they put a fence up, they're gonna hit it.
I'm the guy in the middle. I'm trying to
Yeah.
appease both sides, okay? I'm
We-
the stuffing of the Oreo sandwich.
So here's
I'm
the-
going to him.
I'm gonna make this easy for you. We don't need to be appeased. We could care less. We're the finders of fact. We're gonna tell you what needs to go there.
Well, the fence was a request, okay? From, at the last meeting, when we were all copacetic here, the fence was a request.
Yeah.
I tried to deal with that. I went to him and asked him to incur additional costs, which he's willing to, all right? And now he comes back, he sends me, again, I'm just, I'm in the middle here, just relaying a message, okay? So,
Stone wall.
no, but the stone wall was thrown down because of the fact, that we had no problem putting up a stone wall, but the fence was thrown down because of the fact that you said that it would end up stopping everything. You wanted everything to be able to flow through.
We've, just a little bit of background. These chain link fences on the edge of parking areas are very beneficial, especially in a situation like this where you're within the no disturb zone, you're close to the wetland. There are, there's litter and things that come off of these paved surfaces and go right into the wetland. The chain link fence stops all of that. So that's, I think, the reason behind Sean's request to get a fence in there. Now, I think a common sense suggestion, Al just made it, you know, a guardrail would make sense to protect a fence closer to the pavement. I mean, or wheel stops, as Joe said, you know?
I'm not suggesting wheel stops, I'm being practical that if you want the wheels to stay on the pavement, the fence can be no closer than 4 feet from the pavement, which means we would be relaxing this by 2 feet. That's where I was coming from. I think the fence for all the reasons you said, has a clear benefit. The higher it is, the less inclined snow stockpiling is gonna get over there. That lot's gonna wanna be plowed to that edge somewhat. And I think a fence eliminates that. Getting it 4 feet back gives you the ability to put some snow along the edge there, but not over it. So I think 4 feet's a good compromise, and it's still, I think in the spirit of what Sean was looking for, accomplishes the same thing.
Done.
I agree with Joe with the 4 feet and the fence.
All right. Jack, any more questions?
Yeah, I think it's a good practical solution for this situation.
It seems to be general consensus that 4 feet off works, correct? The other issue we have with this project is there's some outstanding fines.
No, there's a court. We're in court for
There is
that.
a court date.
Yeah, there's a court date, and if I don't get the resolution at the clerk's hearing, we're gonna be going to a jury trial.
Okay.
Okay? I have, no, the officer
Okay.
hasn't sent out the date
Okay,
yet.
all
You'll
right.
get it when I get it,
Okay.
okay?
Any more questions? We need a motion.
Recommend issuing a negative determination, requiring that the fence be 4 feet off the pavement and allowing for the rest of the work as depicted.
So,
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, great,
Thank you.
Yeah, so
We're
the
good.
fence goes at 4 feet?
4 feet.
Beautiful.
Yep,
And
okay.
I'll have Al readdress the plot plan.
Okay, great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next one is 242-1774, request to continue to 3/11.
So moved.
second.
Actually, we have an updated request to March 25th instead. They
To
need a
what?
They asked an updated request for continuance to March 25th.
March 25th.
Yeah, they still need time with the planning board.
You've never had any abutters present to question any of this, on that hearing, have they?
No,
Because extending it that far out typically, not typically, but oftentimes requires renotice.
yeah,
But I don't think it's
yeah.
warranted here.
The planning board is having a hearing on it.
Okay, this time, just request to continue to 3/11,
And continue it again.
and then continue again.
Yeah, and I got, well, okay,
All right?
That's fine.
Why don't we do that?
all right.
And then, they won't come either. So we're on to 3/11.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1764 High Street. We're gonna hold that for a little bit, till Sean gets here. And 242-1762, 95 Lions Way.
So the commission will recall that this project involves converting a surface detention pond to a subsurface infiltration chamber. Most of the work is out of the buffer zone, but it does discharge to a wetland that contains a vernal pool. It's gone through review with our town engineer. The applicant satisfactorily addressed the town engineer's comments. And at the last meeting, the only remaining issue was whether the town was gonna take over a long-term O&M, or if the homeowner was going to take that responsibility over. We heard back from town engineer that the DPW is not willing to take over that responsibility, and the homeowner has agreed to do that. So we have an O&M plan that has the homeowner listed as the responsible party for long-term maintenance. The other issue is the commission asked if the engineer could look at removing the existing discharge point that is at the stone wall at the edge of the wetland, further up into the buffer zone. And I think, long story short, he's here this evening, he can speak for, to his analysis, but he was of the opinion that it would result in more impact to the buffer to get it out of the stone wall than to just leave it. But I can, Doug Lees, he's the project engineer, he's here this evening, so if you have questions for me or him.
I understand, they're both separate issues, and I agree with the second one, that it would be more impactful. We always try to remove point sources as best we can. In fact, mostly we try to eliminate them before they get built. This is not age-old, but this is, part of the original infrastructure out there. And I don't see what direct benefit we have. We get direct benefit by pulling the discharge out. What we do have for a benefit, though, is the infiltrated Caltech chambers functioning and maintained properly. Most of that water should be soaking to the ground in dry conditions, and that point source almost doesn't exist in those events. But on those flashy events, regardless of where it is, it's still gonna discharge out to that same area. So I don't see any great benefit in doing it, even a temporary disturbance, to pull that back. On the broader sense, my concern was initially a bunch of across-the-desk agreement to take on responsibility, and I think, I'm the one who raised the original concern, acceptance of a subdivision and an acceptance of a public way at town meeting accepts all of the rights, including easement rights, and it even obligates the town to start maintaining things like snow plowing and resurfacing in the future of the roadway and cleaning up the catch basins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this seemed to be like an informal agreement until I heard, and I stand corrected, if it's documented and memorialized in the O&M plan, and if they don't maintain it, we would have to get into enforcement action. The reality is it's sort of telling that the town itself, whose obligation ought to be to maintain the stormwater system, is unwilling to maintain the stormwater system, and is perfectly willing to let the homeowner do that. So it's kind of scary. But as long as it's documented, that's what we go after.
All set.
I'll say.
I have no questions.
No questions. Motion?
Closing and issuing in 21 days.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you were just dying to make a presentation, but. No, I'm good. Thank you very much. Have a great night. You too. Next one is 242 1766 1600 Oscar Street.
So the commission, we have representatives here this evening. Commission, pretty much, I think all of your questions have been answered. Stormwater peer review is closed out and with a clean bill of health. The planning board is still currently reviewing, but has, their review is revolving now around sewer, water, and DOT, which probably won't have a lot of impact in terms of what we see for, a final design on the project, or at least in the commission's jurisdiction. Commission tasked staff to prepare a draft decision with the hopes that we close the hearing tonight and issue the decision tonight, because we have only 4 of you that are eligible to vote on the project, and quorum is going to get tenuous from here on out, so. I mean, if you have any questions for me or the.
Mike, historically, we don't approve projects before all the boards have gone through we're gonna make an exception on this one because of the dates of who's gonna be here and who's not, if they're comfortable with that.
I think the driving point is we would always want the planning board, because any decision they might render could potentially alter the project, but we're crystal clear in the work that they're reviewing is way outside of jurisdiction. Even the sewer, which would be the closest thing to us, is still way outside of jurisdiction. And it's gonna be coming as a separate town project in the future anyway. You know, should it be within jurisdiction?
Right.
So the reality is, I don't think we're sticking our necks out, I don't think we're making an exception, I think we're doing the practical thing. Now, the risk on the applicant's part is, what if the planning board does something? That's the risk they're willing to take, apparently. And I'm willing to relax that too.
No questions?
I have no questions.
No question. Motion?
Motion that we close and issue a decision within 21 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye? Aye. Opposed? And
Opposed.
one opposition.
And just for the record, I just want to state for the record that my no vote is based solely, not against the project. My no vote is based solely on the inclusion of calcium carbonate being used as fill under the building as proposed. My fear is that the more we learn about calcium carbonate and recycled concrete aggregate, the more that someday somebody at the state level is going to wake up and ban it outright. And that's the basis of my no vote. Otherwise, I have no problem with the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tried to obviously address all the commission's concerns and work towards a project that's permittable. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
I want to thank the applicants for working with the subcommittee. I think it went smoother by doing it that way. And good luck on your project. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey. Let's see. Next one is 242 Noah, DP number 1230 Salem Street.
All right, so this notice of intent is for a new single-family house, an associated septic system, driveway and appurtenances on a vacant wooded lot off of Salem Street. This property had a previous order of conditions in 1985 that governed the same. However, that order was never acted upon, expired, and the commission issued a certificate of compliance closing that expired order out. The proposed work involves construction of a single-family house. The 50-foot no-build zone is being respected. And I'll pull up a plan here for you to review. Here, I'll do a colored plan. Conservation staff met with the wetland consultant yesterday to review the wetland flag. We asked that one flag be moved about 30 feet up gradient, but it didn't end up impacting the proposed work. It was up in this area. Is that the D series?
Yep, D
Yeah,
series.
D
right on
series,
that.
right on the point of D series. D series may contain a potential vernal pool, and the work is respecting the no disturb zone, the 50-foot no disturb zone, and the 75-foot no build zone, if indeed it's a vernable, so. Test pits have been done for the septic. Yeah.
I mean, the design is pretty clear, and it seems reasonable and responsible. Kind of curious about the existing 10-foot cart path. What's the status of that?
So the cart path was on one of the old plans. So we just highlighted it. It's an old like woods road skidder trail.
It's abandoned.
Yeah, and nothing's happening with it. We just showed it on the plan.
So there's no intention to,
No.
and again, just for clarity.
Yep.
I would prefer, and we can condition this, that that is abandoned, no longer in use.
Oh.
Because I don't want it to be construed that it's an improved, because it's shown on the plan.
Right.
It's shown in violation, but as long as you're abandoning the use of it, I'm satisfied.
Yep.
Where does it go to? Or where does it come from?
Up there, it goes everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, why I'm asking is is it listed as an easement on any other deeds? or-
No, that cart path existed way back in the 1960s. It was just an old cart path when Salem Street was a dirt road back in those days, when horses used to go up and down Salem Street back in the early days. It wasn't no. But that wood cart path was just going from Salem Street all the way out to the backwoods, head towards Boxford. It's just been non-existent. I just happened to locate it as an existing feature. Anyone of their senior years might have been in the neighborhood, might recognize it, might have taken walks along that path, but it's abandoned.
Well, the reason I asked is a lot of those out in that area, if you look at Assessors Map 104D, there's a bunch of them. And a lot of abutting properties have them listed on their title insurance as easements. So I just wondering if you investigated that, might it be? It doesn't matter to me here on this filing, it's just my curiosity on it. Those things, I know they appear abandoned, and then you find out one day they're really not. Someone else has access to it, so it's just, you know, a word to the wise, I guess. I'm all set.
We just let the commission go, and then I'll ask, and I'll put about input.
I'm all set, thank you.
Yep, no questions. Jack?
Yeah, just for clarification, it looks, on the plan, it looks like all your construction is outside the 100-foot buffer zone?
For the most part, the driveway is within that,
Yeah.
but it is out of.
But the house?
Yep.
Is, yeah, the
Yep.
septic system,
Septic system also is outside the
Right.
100-foot buffer zone.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep,
Yep, there'll be lawn space and some clearing for the septic system that'll be within the buffer.
so it looks like that D-series wetland, even if it is vernal pool, if it's determined to be a vernal pool, it looks like you won't have any building impact, you won't have any impacts inside the 75-foot no-build zone.
Exactly, we respected it, just even if it was a potential vernal pool, so we wouldn't have to look at that in the spring.
And then it looks like your clearing, your limit of clearing is shown by that black dotted line, and,
Yep,
okay, so you're up to the 50 on that on the other series wetlands.
right.
I don't have any other questions.
Doug?
No question.
You have a question? Would you please go to the podium and state your name and address?
My name is Nancy Bontempo. I'm at 1234 Salem Street, so I'm in a butter. And so I just kind of want to know what is happening and what's going on a little bit, because I knew that the property was there for a long time, and then I knew that it was for sale, and then it was sold. But basically, when I look out my window, I see where I believe the driveway is going to be put, because it's the only place that it can go. About 10, 15 years ago, when my husband and I had to redo our deck, we were told that we could not bring it out because of the wetlands. And now it almost looks like where the driveway is going is exactly where they told us where we couldn't go near at all. So I'm a little confused as to what's going on and how it's going to affect me.
Ma'am?
1234?
1234, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Lot number, it says lot number 14.
The gray house.
According to this plan, yeah,
I'm the gray
it's gotta be
house.
that one.
In the front, street here.
This one here?
Yep,
This house
this
right
one.
here, lot 12, double A?
Yeah, it's lot 12 AA, exactly.
Yeah, we have you, we got you there.
Yeah, I just don't, according to this plan, this,
So unless there are other isolated wetlands, I can't explain what was said on your property, but I can tell you within context of what is delineated and verified as the line on this one, what they're proposing is meeting all of our setback requirements, and it looks like in the vicinity of your house, there's nothing between your house and their driveway that would, the proposed driveway that would prevent you from building a deck, but I don't know what else exists on the other side of your house. I just don't know. Was that, you didn't come to this commission, was that at staff level that was handled, that question was handled?
When this was probably 15 years ago when the building permit was pulled. So that's what we were told. We were told we could not make it any bigger than it was because of the wetlands. So I'm just curious why the wetlands aren't an issue now.
We don't remember you coming here, but I see the 100-foot buffer zone, and it looks like your house is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, so.
Could you just explain that to me? This is all new, and I don't understand the language, so I would
So they-
appreciate understanding a little bit more.
Well, they're asking to build a house,
I understand that.
so, and,
Let me just try to make it simple, so you can understand it better. So there's a couple of wetlands on this project. One is out in this area, one is up in the back here, and one is larger over here. This is your house. So from that wetland, this is the 100-foot line. Anything outside of that 100-foot line, away from there, assuming there's nothing else over here, doesn't even need to come to conservation. So if you were to say, I'd like to build a deck, and came in for a permit today, unless there's another wetland area, so you would probably get a permit without ever coming to this hearing. And because they're so far away from that wetland by being, they could be as close as 25, but they're maintaining 50. They need a waiver to get as close to 25, but they're maintaining 50, meaning it's permittable. But there's a driveway next to the wetland that exists, this one proposed, and then your house. So you've got really two physical barriers before you even get to that wetland. I can't imagine why, if you would like to build a deck, you shouldn't consider that again.
No, we did build a deck. We built the deck, but we were just told we could not build it. We couldn't push it out any further because they said it would be too close to the wetlands.
That I don't know. We've all got pretty good memories. In 15 years, I don't remember that lot at all, and I would remember most of them.
It might not have been
Never got to us.
conservation, it might have been zoning.
How about the trees and the way it's, we have a buffer of trees in the back for privacy. With the building of the new home and the driveway coming around the side there, are there trees gonna still stay there, or is that going down?
We don't know anything. We don't know what we don't know what the proposal is. We don't know what their plan looks like.
Is it too early to ask, maybe, because of the
No, it's not too
building?
early. First of all, if it's not in the buffer zone, then he can cut all the trees he wants.
on his
So
property.
the trees
On his
could come
property.
down because they're not in the buffer zone?
Let's
Is that what you're
stop mince words. They got a great picture, great graphic up there right now. You see their gray driveway, and you see your house.
Yep.
Lower
Right,
center
is-
here, right?
Yeah?
That blue line is 100 feet. If they were clearing anything, doing anything, clearing trees, building a driveway, putting a heliport in, doing anything inside that blue line, they would be telling us about it tonight. The fact that they're not showing us trees, I'm presuming you're not clearing trees between the driveway and that blue line.
No, clearing trees would be where the driveway is specifically.
Just where the driveway is,
Just the driveway.
but nothing beyond that. So where you're
Exactly.
still showing that lightish green
staying.
is staying wooded as it is.
And then the edge- And then the edge of the clearing for the residential, for the septic, that's shown in that kind of blue with the squiggly line that comes down.
Right there, okay.
Yeah, so there will be trees that
Okay, so
remain.
there'll still be a barrier or some sort of privacy?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, my concern is just when I look out my kitchen window, I'm not gonna see a driveway. Because
Right.
there's
What's
not,
gonna be
there's
trees?
not a lot of land there. There really is
green
not
areas,
that much.
I want to point out the blue line I just gestured about,
Yep,
and where their driveway, see the heavy black line between the two?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
your property line. So between the blue line and that black line, they'd be trespassing, so you're always going to have control of whatever screen's there. That's
Right.
yours.
Right, okay,
okay.
okay, fair
All
enough.
right.
Thank you for explaining it. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you, I appreciate it.
Clarifying question about that. So, between the driveway and the property line, you won't be clearing?
No. No, it would just be the layout of the driveway and the wig train that's on the left side of that driveway.
Well, I don't know if I'd promise that if I were you, just because if you're gonna cut into the ground and you may be close to root structures, you may be compromising a bunch of trees in that thin strip between the driveway and the property line. So I wouldn't,
Okay.
I just caution you not to promise that.
Well, then I'm gonna go so far as to say if any activity which includes clearing of trees, or necessity to clear trees, needs to be shown on the
Shown on the
plan.
plan.
So,
Okay.
in an area where there's a cut zone, which is, actually, the scale is kind of tight, I can't really see it too well. But it looks to be more towards the front,
Yeah, we have to get through a knoll here.
so you're right, the deeper you go, the more vulnerable lateral trees become.
So,
And there's a
that
proposed water
grading-
service right.
yeah, so the
alongside.
grading on there, so I guess it would be the limit of the grading, is that right, Steve? So on that hill, down in the southwest corner, where those grading marks are, that would be the limit of the clearing. And then as you make your way, it's kind of a more gentle slope. There would be less clearing, width-wise for the
Okay,
topo.
so you,
that's in
you
there.
should depict that on a updated plan that says limit of clearing, limit of work. I mean, we can see the grading.
Okay.
We know that,
Okay.
and then give yourself another couple feet
Okay.
as the limit.
I'll show that, and then one of the wetland flag that's changed, that'll be picked up
Okay,
on the
all right.
revised plan as well.
And, you know, I think also requiring some sort of barrier at the edge of that limited clearing on the other side of the driveway might make sense. Snow fence or something, just,
You mean like
if we have a,
flagging
if we, yeah, if we have a limited clearing on the,
You mean as a construction protection measure?
right.
Okay, I thought you meant on a permanent basis.
No, no, no,
As-
for-
all
for
right.
construction. Yep. I mean, because we have water service right along the
Yeah,
side,
typically,
too.
we would rely on the erosion control, but that's downstream, so you're right.
That's right, so-
Limited control, clearing on the upper side makes
It's-
sense.
Yep,
And it is within the jurisdiction.
right.
Keep
So-
walking up, see if, that's all
Yep.
pretty flat, running along the terrain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What do we have over the septic system? Is that a mounded system, or is that, you've got good soil out there?
It's all Loomy sand, it's Canton Fines, Loomy sand out there.
The limited clearing there is pretty much your erosion control line, as shown?
Correct.
All right, so that's already protected and
That's a
shown.
limited clearing. And I do show a limited clearing, a proposed tree cut line within the circumference of the construction work.
Right.
Any other rebutters? Deb?
Jack, questions?
I have none.
Doug? Any questions? Anybody in this project beside you? Together? All right, so we have to continue anyways, we don't have a number, correct?
Yeah, and then we need
And
to
we have
update
some things you have to change? So you'll have it done for the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks? All right, so we need a motion to continue.
So we'll
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not unanimous. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. All right, we're gonna go back, because Sean's here now. Hi, Sean. For 242-1760, 4 High Street. Doug's recusing himself. Yeah, he is.
Doug,
You can
Doug's
sit
gonna,
here, you just can't talk. The commission recalled the last time the applicant was before you, you had requested that test pits be performed. They have been performed and test results have come back. They have been forwarded to Horsley Witten, who have provided a peer review comment letter, and I believe you had that in your packets. The applicant wanted to appear tonight to give you a progress update and also gather any and all lingering questions, concerns, requests from the commission so that they can have a comprehensive final revised plan set that incorporates all of your issues, concerns. Dewatering plan has been provided. It does call for all dewatering activities to be outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. It might need to get a little more refined once a SWIP comes along. And we also, I'd like to talk about requiring a Phragmites root barrier. I think it would give the wetland a fighting chance from Phragmite infestation. And, so that's sort of a recap. If you have specific questions, the applicant's here this evening.
Yeah, so I've read the documentation that's moved back and forth between the review engineer and the design engineer and the subconsultant, and this seems to be close to closure, but there's still some work that has to be done with regards to test pits and boring in the discovery of where seasonal ground high water is with regards to the drainage systems, and really until all that flushes out, that's what we were asking for a few months now, and they've done the work and it's being evaluated, but they're just not there yet. So I'm going to reserve comment until I see what that outcome is.
Al?
Thank you. So Amy, first, I agree with you with regard to the Phragmites. In fact, I take as aggressive approach as you want to take with regard to Phragmites. They're not an endangered species by any means, and I don't know what we can possibly use to kill them. They seem to grow in every environment, anywhere, including the middle of a highway. My question for you guys is, at any point in the construction on this project, do you anticipate bringing onto the site any fill materials of any kind?
The material that we would be bringing on would be granular, clean fill to be used under the stormwater infiltration or select materials for base course materials and that kind of.
Be more specific.
So it would be the imported sand and gravels or crushed stone. And it would be coming from a quarry operation or a clean site. So it would not be imported fill, it would be natural soils that have been processed to use for that. So no recycled concrete or anything
No
like that.
RCA?
I don't believe
No
so.
recycled glass or crushed glass?
No.
Because we don't like it. And we're learning enough about it that we don't want to see it anywhere. So choose your fill wisely. And in fact, what I recommend is if the need comes that you need to bring fill onto the site, check with Amy first, provide a certificate of origin for it. It doesn't have to be analyzed. If it's bony gravel or something like that, no problem, but if it's anything other than that,
Not for our purposes, but it may be for the building inspector, it's for that purpose.
We have, on the boilerplate now, it's in there.
I realize it's in the boilerplate, but I realize there are always exceptions, and while I think the boilerplate is a great place to start, I don't rely upon it. I like to have the conversation and get it out right now, so that you know in advance to choose what you decide to truck into the site. And that's my comment. That's going to be, apparently that's going to be my issue, so.
I don't know if this is wetlands or not, because I haven't looked at it that much, but I'm concerned about that easement that runs right through the middle of your project. That's a big pipe in there, and it's very deep.
The easement that goes through is for there's two easements. One is for the electric poles that go there, and those are gonna get put underground as part of this project.
Okay.
And then there is one sewer line in there, and I don't know what the size of it is, but there's a sewer line as well.
It's big, I remember putting it in. I think it's 24 inch, but I'm not sure. That's the main trunk line that goes to the treatment plant. And I remember when they dug it, and I'm pretty sure it's like 20 feet deep. So, the easement, I don't know where the pipe is in the easement. And in your the middle building, it's right on the easement line. I asked Amy to make sure DPW sees it. if they have any concerns about it.
DPW signed off on the plans that have gone through planning.
But they might have missed the easement. I mean, that,
Sure.
to put an excavator on that corner of that building is, could be not good for either people. The integrity of the building could be an issue.
No, we certainly would want to protect it, and we would
Right,
include it in
so
any
I'm just-
construction
That's why I'm
management.
throwing it out there, because,
Sure.
wherever it is, it's not in the buffer zone.
Yeah.
I
But-
think Louis' caution is very good, unless the Public Works Department saw a different set of plans than what we're seeing. The easement is only shown on the existing conditions plan. And it don't, I'm flipping through the other ones that have the buildings on it, and it's,
If you look at C100 and look at the dashed lines that are shown on C100,
It's right on the dotted line, it's right on the corner.
yeah, it's showing it, it's the dashed lines. So the lower one is the lower one going from across the site is the electric easement. And then as you go up, there's another electric easement, and then there's a sewer easement, which is actually at the top of the page. It's the top line that goes all the way across.
He's correct in saying there was a sewer line we saw that came off of,
Well, there's a sewer line coming from Sutton Pond as well. There's another one that, if you can see on
and there's a
the,
Y. Looks like
goes, it's right there.
Y is not what they used to be. Okay. But that's my only concern.
Okay.
Is the integrity of that building. If they have to get down to where the pipe is. And
Sure.
I'm positive that the pipe is at least 20 feet down. So you dig, and to get 20 feet down,
Yep.
they're gonna use all of the easement.
Yeah, appreciate, that's why, and I'm David Gillespie from Avalon Bay. This is Kevin Stetson from Sanborn Head. He's our geotechnical engineer. So because of the amount of questions at the last hearing about test pits, site history, environmental history, so on, I asked Kevin to come tonight because we are still, as you mentioned, as everyone mentioned before, we're still getting to the last comments related to the Horsley-Witten review, which we think we'll have buttoned up pretty soon. But we knew that test pits and geotechnical conditions and dewatering were a big issue for the commission last time. So I asked Kevin specifically to come and answer questions about that. I didn't get a chance to do so.
Why I brought it up was because I saw it today,
Okay.
and I remember what it used to be, so I'm trying to help you guys.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Because, if, God forbid, if something happens to that
No,
sewer
I know.
pipe, in that area, it could be critical.
Yep.
And to reinforce what Mr. Lynch said, we were the ones that championed the test pits and the dewatering protocol. According to Amy, the dewatering plan isn't quite up to snuff. Is it better?
It's broad, but
And I'm interested in the test pits. And I myself could not approve I would be reluctant to approve the project without knowing what kind of material is there.
Would you like Kevin to go through the test pit information? He can make a presentation
Yes.
related to that
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's there. I think I know what's there, but I'll leave it up to the
Sure.
guy with the degree.
Kevin, just to underscore one of the things that jumped out to me, and I hope you can elaborate on it without me having to ask the question, but I'll ask it, say it ahead of time, is one of the conflicts between Horsley-Witten's review and the test pit results and the design is that there seems to be discussions about where seasonal high water is. And your folks seem to say, yeah, we found modeling evidence at higher elevation, but you're attributing it to snow melt off, extremely wet surface water getting down from the top, which we all know when you're seeing modeling, it's not coming from above, it usually is coming from, so there's a clear conflict which directly drives the elevation of these infiltrating basins and which design approach is used to some significant depth. And there's a conflict in that, so.
I can address that. So, on the plan in front of you, you can see where we've done the test pits. We did 6 test pits in infiltration area number 2, which is on the, I guess, my left side, but the, kind of the western side of the site. And then we did 3 test pits, which are 7, 8, and 9, in the infiltration area number 1, as they refer to it on the plans. I'm going to kind of break these 2 areas up because they're kind of separate. In system number 1, which is test pit 7, 8, and 9. We excavated through fill. Fill was around 7 feet deep in the first 2 test pits, 7 and 8. It was much shallower in 9, most likely due to that's kind of in the general area where there used to be a building back in the, when the train line ran through there. What we found there was groundwater was only encountered in 7, at about 10.5 feet below the ground surface. The other 2, and we saw modeling above that ground elevation, above the groundwater in the natural soils there, because that was all down in the natural soils. We had gone through the fill, and we're actually into the natural tills and sands. In 8, we found similar modeling at similar elevation. 9, which is where we said we saw a much higher level of modeling, but we dug 10 feet, and we saw modeling above that, which we don't believe is indication of seasonal high. For one reason is we didn't encounter water in the hole to a much greater depth. Also was not consistent with the other 2 test pits that were right next to it. So in that particular area, it wasn't, we weren't talking about the snow melt in that area. The snow melt is adjacent to the other test pits that we talk about, just to be clear on that. So that area is, groundwater is down. Seasonal high, we said, was about elevation 78.5. So the infiltration system is being set 2 feet above that. That is one thing that they are adjusting that was originally set, I think, at 79.5, and we're pushing it up a foot, and they're readjusting all of the piping to get that separation. And it's all going to be in natural soils, and the soils are all fairly consistent, and I believe they agreed with, the infiltration rates and all of that we had recommended based on the data that we submitted. So that's that one location. The other location, which is the test pits 1 through 6, that area, the fill is thinner. It's between 3 and 5, maybe 5.5 feet in locations. We did encounter some buried topsoil. And in those locations, groundwater was observed up in the fill, and therefore there's really no modeling to be observed. But we did observe modeling also down in the tills below it, which indicate that groundwater could be lower at times. And the 2 test pits that are closest to our boring 2, SH1, and that parking lot, that was where there was a very large pile of snow. And unfortunately, the day that we did these test pits was the day after the weekend of 70 degrees. And so that whole area was saturated from all the snow melt. And so those 2 test pits, we saw groundwater higher than all of the other test pits around it, but we still use that number as our seasonal high to be representative, but we feel that that is representative even though it's a couple feet higher than all the other test pits that we saw for groundwater. Again, in that area, we had the fills were granular, but there are some mixed in organics, most likely old topsoil that was placed out there when they filled that area many years ago. So that's basically what we saw for soils. And the soil conditions are actually, 5 out of the 6 test pits were better. We had 1 test pit that has a lower infiltration rate. However, we don't believe we can excavate all of that out easily. So the design is based on the lowest infiltration rate. And they do mention that, if that could be replaced, you could use a higher one. But right now, it's designed based on that information.
All right, so that's number you just gave us, has Josue Witten bought into that? Does that remove that stalemate? They were in agreement with that description you've just given, and the redesign and the reevaluation is going to be based on what you just said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're getting close.
Yeah, Horsley Witten reviewed Kevin's information, the test pit information, and the latest plans from Ty and Bond, and we provided written descriptions of how we were going to modify the plans to make sure that they were comfortable with all the data. They came back and said, okay, we get it, now modify all the plans to reflect what you've said you're going to do. So that's what's happening right now. The plans are getting updated. The final stormwater report is being updated with just the changes that were required per this last peer review. But I think the test pit information from Horsley Witten's point of view has passed us.
Can you get back to me?
Sure. Okay, I just want to revisit the dewatering plan. Amy, you had said that it was, you would accept it, but it was very generalized. Do you need it to be more specific?
I think it'll be better informed by the SWIP. And I think if they can commit to keeping dewatering out of the buffer zone, I think we'd be in good shape. Yeah.
But that would be in the order of
Yeah.
conditions then? Okay. Thank you.
Jack?
Yeah, I just see that we have, a pretty thorough review with Horsley Witten as a follow-up. Just want to make sure that's, done properly and use a conservative design for these infiltrators and the whole system. So no other questions.
Sean? No, Doug.
That's right. So, just to review, I know quite a while ago, you guys were in here with an original set of plans. We had a meeting, and is this the first time you've been back since? There was one other time?
We were here in July,
Yeah.
and that's when we had wetlands filling.
Yep.
And Amanda Hool from Ty and Bond is here to talk about the wetlands, if there's any particular wetlands questions. She's our wetland scientist. We were here in July, we were told, stay out of the wetlands. We came back in November with a revised plan that removed those impacts, and Amanda can talk through whatever remaining impacts there are, so we're out of the 25.
Good.
I let Amanda talk about where we are, but the buildings are out of the buffer zones that we discussed last time.
Yep.
And that plan hasn't changed.
Okay.
So the only thing that has changed, and it's maybe not important to this commission, but it's important to the planning board where I was last night, is since we last came, the footprints are staying the same, but we went from 200 units to 170 units by removing the 5th floor of the building. So now they're 2 4-story apartment buildings and not 5-story apartment buildings. So that was under review at the planning board last night, but we're keeping the footprints of the buildings the same.
When you came into us originally, was there 2 or 3 buildings proposed?
There were 3 buildings. There were 2 residential buildings and a maintenance building.
Yep.
And the maintenance building was the one that was closest to the wetlands. We've now have 3 built, when we came in November, there were 3 buildings, and they were the same 3 footprints that you see here tonight.
And originally, were there 200 units originally?
250 originally.
250, that's what
So it's gone from 250 originally down to 170.
And once this review is done, where do we go from here? I mean, have we looked at barriers to wetlands and other things like that at this point?
I think the only barrier that, we talked about a barrier, a root barrier to prevent the Phragmites from taking over the ball field.
Yep. Sean, you're right. We haven't gotten down to brass tacks of erosion controls, physical barriers, any place they're getting close. You know, we haven't gotten into anywhere near that kind of detail, because we just haven't, until these are worked out.
Okay.
And knowing what the stormwater system looks like.
Yep.
Finally, we just spinning our wheels, getting specific at that level.
All right.
Changing with that planning. They've been changing. Like you said, they went from 250 to 200 to 170. Buildings got moved, got moved out of the wetlands.
So as of last night.
I just want to make sure where we're at now and where we're going forward. So that's what we're going to look at next. Once this
Yeah, the
issue is
most-
clarified, we'll
right.
go ahead and drill down on how close they are to
So I do want a
wetlands and-
clarification to your question from what was just said. So as a planning board last night, you've eliminated story height. Building footprint, you said, hasn't changed, but you're also not changing parking limits. The site layout will be the same? Not changing yet,
No,
okay.
the site layout hasn't changed since November either. It's been the same building footprints and the same limits of parking and so on. That's been the
So
same since
I guess
November.
the reason why I asked that is, even as a result of last night's planning board hearing, presuming stormwater moves along and there's agreement met, we can then start drilling down on exactly these limits and protections. We now have a site plan that, barring any change from stormwater design, of course, we have something that can be thought to be getting close to those kind of details.
The stormwater is what the planning board's waiting for as well, to finalize their review. And we think we're on the planning board, the next planning board meeting is the 25th of February, and we're on for that.
If I may, sheet C-103 also does have our proposed erosion controls, which define the limit of work. And so that is currently a part of this plan set you have in front of you. something you wanted to consider and offer comment on tonight if you needed any additional revisions.
So, you guys, I didn't give you the plan set because I knew it was gonna change again, so I have it up on the screen. Yeah,
But which probably isn't too much different, right? Yeah.
This, I think the only thing that may have changed since then is the shape of the infiltration chamber number 2 that you see there. If you look at your old one, it's a little smaller.
So perhaps Amy started looking at those sorts of protections and the environmental protections, but at the commission level here, until we have the stormwater issue, I've just been reluctant to dive that deep into it. So, I mean, if you folks think this is the time to start talking about those things, I suppose we could, but
Well, we do have locations for all of those on the existing drawings, and then within our details, we do have our standard details for those measures. If the commission wishes to have different measures than what are proposed in the standard details in our plan, we'd be open to that. You know, if you prefer silt socks over straw bales, or, you know, if you have certain preferences.
But what about permanent post-construction barriers? Any fences proposed between wetlands and parking lot areas, or walls or anything like that?
I would defer to Dave on that. I know during our earlier iteration of the design, when we were talking with Agent Hughes when she was here, she did discuss the need for permanent bounds and markers to demarcate the no disturb zone wetland, whether they could be implemented in a variety of structures, whether they're bounds or a split rail fence. But I would defer to Dave on what he would be looking for to install.
If you start on the left-hand side, where that's a wall on the far left, on the far left there. So I don't believe it's a retaining wall, right, where the high side is the parking and the low side is the wetlands.
Do you have some kind of fencing on top of that retaining wall? For safety purposes?
I think we would, depending on the height of it.
Yeah, I would
We would-
expect, given the height, that there is a.
There is a fence on top of it. And then on the backs, and then the other buffer zone is on the back side of Building B,
And so that would be an area where you'd probably not want snow pushed up against there, right? Because it would just go off the side into a wetland.
Yeah.
And so do you have snow stockpiling signs proposed there?
we don't, we've proposed that, except for very small events, we would be taking the snow off-site. And we haven't proposed anything on the backside of Building B, which is the building on top, where you have the wetlands to the north, the ball field to the north, only because, you know, we could certainly put a fence back there if that was the interest of the commission, but from our perspective, there's no sidewalk back there, there's no access. I think it looks nice, natural, but be open to signage or otherwise if you were interested in it.
Currently, as it's set up, the building is just almost exactly 50 feet away from the wetland, is that right? For the most part?
That's correct. The building is actually outside of the 50-foot. The only activity currently that we're proposing within the 25-foot no disturb is the removal of impervious area, which is that existing deteriorated parking lot. And then there is a little bit of temporary activity between the 25 and 50, which is additional removal of that parking lot and then some minor grading associated with the building. So the building itself is not located closer than 50 feet to the wetland. It's outside of the 50-foot.
Right, that's good and assumed. But as far as what's going to go on between the 50 and the 25, is that going to be cleared? Is that going to be, what condition is that going to be left in?
It's currently a turf baseball field.
Yeah.
So our intent is to restore it with a native seed mix, such as the New England Wetland Plants wet mix or a conservation and wildlife mix with some native species and additional plugs as warranted if the commission is seeking additional species to be placed in there, I'm sure.
Yep. And you're going to do that right up to the 25?
I'd have to look at the landscape plan.
Well,
I
just for the
think
edge
as
of-
of right
edge
now,
of the
we're just
wetland.
looking at seeding, but right up until, you know, any of our areas of disturbance, we weren't looking to disturb additional buffers, just
Yep.
where we'll be grading and disturbing and removing impervious surfaces.
So,
Inside limit of work.
yeah.
Exactly.
So you're going to
Thank you.
vegetate with certain certain species that will grow and restore the wetland area.
Correct.
And for that area outside of the wetland up to the 25, you're going to put down a seed mix.
Well, we're not actually proposing any activities within the wetlands, so there won't be any plantings within the wetlands. We're
Okay.
proposing more of a conservation and wildlife mix or some sort of buffer transitional mix between the wetland boundary and up to that 50-foot buffer zone line.
Up
where
to the
we-
50 versus the 25. So you're going to put it right up to the building?
Well, there will be, if you look at, there is a landscape drawing, so there will be some plantings surrounding that, but it is our intent to install native plantings and species and native grass cover within that area, because once that impervious surface is removed and the grading is completed,
Right, but
it's
just,
not, there's no intent to go back in there.
right up to the 50, though, is what you're saying. Yep. So right up to the building's foundation almost.
Concerned about stabilization, Sean?
No, I just want to know what they're going to, how, I mean, if it's actually getting right up to the building, then there's probably no need for a permanent barrier. But if, if there's going to be a 25-foot swath of land between the building and the wetland, then maybe I would think a barrier should be put in place.
Well, the dimension is, there is some dimension between the building and the 50. You bring the land, we can review the landscape plan at the next meeting.
Is it at the end?
Maybe it wasn't submitted in the set, we can get a landscape plan.
So I guess that's something, if we are going to see another set of plans, that's something I'd like to see you guys, bring to our, call it out, let us know what your plan is. If you do have a gap between where you have your, where the wetlands are stopping and a parking lot is beginning, or a building is gonna start, I personally would be interested in, if you're marking in with signage is great, but a barrier there to prevent people or trash going in that area is something I'd be looking for too.
Just for clarification. So looking at the November plan set, and we actually have a C-105 tie and bond plan that's entitled landscaping plan. There's also an L1 plan from Hawk Design, which is a landscape plan, which differ greatly.
Yeah, the time bond plan was superseded by the Hawk plan, so.
The conversation we just had with that slide up isn't accurate, because the questions that Sean was asking behind that building, there was a lot of, which is what you were alluding to. You thought there was something behind the building.
Just behind.
The Hawk plan shows a lot of plantings behind that building.
So, through the process, the plan set hasn't been complete throughout, so one set will not have a sheet that I looked at, so just kind of waiting for a really comprehensive plan set. And so this is the December 10th plan set, which is the most up-to-date that I have in my possession. So.
I think it's reasonable to lay down expectations and timetables. We haven't dived, we certainly haven't, I'm not sure staff has, and I'm not saying you should have either, dived deep into looking at the details of the landscaping plan, looking at the details of the erosion control, making sure everything's copacetic, physical barriers, signage, those things that we all look for, snow stockpiling. We haven't dived into that yet because it was a moving target. Until we knew what we had for soils and groundwater, until we knew what the stormwater system was going to look like, if it might be modified or reconfigured, we just didn't, we basically put the brakes on, awaiting all that. I'm hearing we're close. I'm hearing we were close last week, and we're even closer from what I heard tonight. Yeah, so I think the expectation is we're about to look at the full thing, so all those other elements we're talking about. So I think at this point, making sure we have all the latest plans is important, and get right down to those things that we look for.
Right.
And hopefully get them at the next meeting, at the very latest, the meeting after next.
Right.
But I'm not gonna make excuses that we haven't done anything, it's just a waste of our time to dive into it, not knowing things might change. Just wanna be clear.
Right, so you pretty much know what we're looking for. Right?
So close out the Horsley Witten with a revised set of plans that are signed off by them before we come back next time. And then have a set of plans that are consolidated, that include the landscaping details. And Amy, I'll ask you to just take a review of them early, just to let us know if we're missing anything, so that we can have a discussion about those details next time.
Get the plans to staff at least 7 days before the meeting, minimum, so that she can have a chance to, because the later you bring them in, the more likely there'll be confusion at the meeting.
All right, I would take it that we have abutters here. So would any abutter like to get up and have any questions, or would like to speak, or? There is none,
Not at this time.
none at this time.
Not at this time.
So we will, we need a motion to continue. Oh, I'm sorry.
You were talking about the sewer line. There's also a high-pressure gas line running right through there. No mention of that either. I have no idea.
We've heard multiple times about the high-pressure gas. We haven't been able to find it. I've asked people at Sutton Pond that have mentioned it to meet me out there to show it to me. And no one's called me. They all have my number. So I don't really, while I appreciate the comment, and if there was a high-pressure gas line out there, we'd certainly be very concerned about it, but we haven't been able to find it, and no one's been able to point out. We have been talking to Columbia Gas about servicing the site, yes.
I would actually go right to the source, was probably sitting right in front of us. You guys did test pits.
We did test pits.
You
and we
did borings.
And we did dig safe.
You dig safed it.
And dig safed it, and as far as I know, there was no markings for a high-pressure gas line, or we were never notified.
And you're
Typically-
here to tell about it, so you didn't
Yeah,
get killed.
Yeah, and typically if there's high-pressure gas, they are, want to be on site if we're digging anywhere near them. So as far as
Yeah.
we know, there wasn't one located by the utility companies.
We've heard a couple times, but I just want to be
Yeah.
clear on this thing. The owner, done diligence, you know what the easements are, what they're not, and, you know what's on record, and whether you have site control or ownership, I guess I don't even know, but, that will come out in the title search. But beyond that is the physical things. And the gas utilities ought to know where their utilities are, and usually do, not always. But, so, again, that's not a conservation issue. I'm not trying to be cavalier, but there are methods other than the Conservation Commission to bring up a gas main, unless that main's being proposed to be dug up through a wetland, and then we do want to know about that.
We'll reach out to Columbia Gas again.
Yeah, that would be, I think, a good idea.
Yeah.
That was my question, because there's a foreign main going in Building A.
Okay.
So where's it come from? It doesn't come from Sutton Pond.
Yeah.
It has to come from High Street or down the access road into Sutton Pond. I mean, it doesn't just automatically just appear.
So they're gonna check again and report back to us at the next meeting.
And when you said you spoke to Columbia Gas, that was to service the property, did the discussion come up about, is there an old gas main, any chance of an old gas main out here?
We had two conversations. We dig safe, we've done it twice now, right? Yeah. For the borings over a year ago, and then we did it for the test pits.
Yeah.
And then we had a conversation, our construction team had a conversation with Columbia Gas about service to the site. I don't know if they specifically asked about existing utilities out there, but we will follow up on it.
And with dig safe, did anybody bring up the word, there's rumors about an existing gas line out here?
There was no notification from the gas company that there was one, and as far as I know, there were no, we were, in our areas, there were no paint marks from the gas company saying, hey, there's one here.
Had either of you two, or anybody asked anybody, if there's an existing gas line out there specifically?
No, but there's no easement, but we've done the legal search, there's no easement on record. We'll
Just
ask
that-
the specific question. We will ask the specific question again, but.
Now, the irony there is, if the gas, I'm not gonna get into legal matters, but if the gas service is from the street onto private property, and there's agreement to serve the private property with gas, doesn't need to be an easement. You just have, they have the land, you're being served by them, you've given them permission to bring that in. So, I think the markout is critical, and just because there's no easement doesn't mean it's not a pipe.
But DigSafe would identify that, Joe.
gotta be
DigSafe would, if there was
There's a
if there
process-
was any type of a feed pipe, DigSafe would identify it.
Well, but
I happened to be home when they were marking the
Bobby?
main in front of my house.
If
On the wrong side of the street.
Here and there.
Yeah.
If there's no gas line there, they're not gonna mark it. But when the construction goes in, they start digging holes to put septic and sewer in,
Yeah.
then the pipe is definitely there. So there is a pipe there. It doesn't come from nowhere. I mean, it doesn't come from Sutton Pond or Main Street. It has to come from High Street. It's not coming down from Sutton Pond, from Sutton Street through the wetlands, what you call. It has to come somewhere. It's just not coming down of thin air.
It could be coming from Sutton Street.
What's that?
It could be coming from Sutton Street.
Well, through the wetlands?
No, probably through the industrial park.
What? I don't
There's
know.
still wetlands there. Through the industrial park?
Under the paved portion of the road, that's generally where they go.
Up the old railroad easement.
Yeah. That's generally where they go. I'm not saying I know there's one there, I'm just, experience has taught us that that's where they put them.
You know, with spinning our wheels on hypothetical, the reality is.
They're gonna check.
What they're proposing is what they're proposing. If there's something beyond what they're proposing, they come in for modification requests, whether it's the gas company or whether it's the sewer or anything else. This is their proposal. If they accounted for nothing underground, this is their proposal. And that's all we can expect of the professionals in the ownership on the applicant's behalf, flushes those things out. But the permit that's being asked for is to build these three buildings, the utilities, and to manage the stormwater within the context of what our purview is in conservation is we have very limited jurisdiction of what it is we talk about. And we don't begin to talk about who has rights and no rights to be there with gas or no gas or where it is. If they find it by mistake, that's their problem. If they find it after the fact, they bring it back as a modification to be dealt with. But we can't be dealing with hypotheticals.
We need a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, so that'll be, 11th of March, is that, you should have.
I think, yeah, as I was saying, I looked at the dates. I think the peer review would be closed out by the 19th, but I don't think that we would have it a week before the 19th. So in that instance, I guess the 11th is what.
All right,
makes
so
sense.
you want, it'll be March 11th. All right, so motion to continue to March 11th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I live at 182 High Street. I've lived there for 48 years. My husband was a town employee for 35 years at the high school. I'm kind of concerned about the sewer plant. Are they going to be able to handle all these new apartments? Many years ago, we had a terrible odor from the plant, and we went through that for a long time, long time, and it was absolutely disgusting until they finally capped all the tanks. Now, that's really a big concern to me. I don't know anything about this water flow and everything, but we already have a dumping into the river with an overflow when they have heavy rains. So can you tell us a little bit about the sewer? Will they be able to handle this?
Our purvey, because
It doesn't?
It's not a wetlands issue.
It's not wetlands, you're
It's
not.
not a wetlands issue.
Okay.
So therefore, we can speculate, we can talk about it.
Right.
Sanitary sewer is directly under DPW.
The DPW.
DPW
Okay.
directly covers placement of sewer, sanitary sewer.
The sanitary sewer.
Board of Health
okay.
handles, and
All
Board of
right,
Health
the
and
smell
DPW.
was unbelievable
It's not-
that we went through.
Yeah.
You know? And of course, now the gas explosion, we need to find out a gas line.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but that, we don't
Thank you.
even, we have no info on that, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, all set.
What's next?
I'm confused.
Give it a minute, it'll take 2 minutes to.
All these abutters may got nothing to say.
Yeah, TTOI, yeah. Good night, thank you. Thank you.
Boy, we emptied out this place.
That's a full house, that's a real full house sitting back there, I gotta tell you. That's a motley crew.
Take about 10 minutes for the room to cool down.
All right, the next one is 242 1779 0 Stevens Street.
This notice of intent comes from the trustees of reservations for their Wire Hill property that abuts Lake Kachikowick. So let me just go briefly through previous permitting on that property. In 2009, the trustees shared a report or submitted a report to the Board of Selectmen regarding prescribed fire management undertaken during April, May, and November of 2008, utilizing state grant money. This program aimed to restore Barrens habitat, reduce fuel loads on the forest floor, and provide North Andover Fire Department with wildfire response training. 2010, a similar report was submitted to the Board of Selectmen for management activities taken during 2009. In 2014, we have a forest cutting plan on file to manage for Barrens habitat involving 14 acres of canopy thinning and clearing on the southwest slope of Wire Hill. In May 2014, there were 2 friendly enforcement orders that were issued, one to a Eagle Scout to construct a boardwalk over an intermittent stream along Edgewood Farm Trail, and a second one, friendly EO to trustees to construct a boardwalk along Kachikowick Trail and perform shoreline erosion control repairs. And then again, in July of 2016, a friendly enforcement order was issued to the trustees for further shoreline erosion control and repairs at Stump Beach and Pebble Beach. So this current notice of intent comes for approval to perform prescribed burn within the 25-foot no disturb zone, but only up to the upland sides of the fire breaks, which are the trails along the shoreline. Work in the 50 and the rest of the buffer zone include heavy mowing, prescribed fire, and invasive species control. There's, the activities aren't in sensitive areas. I mean, we have a trail in between the shore and a nice vegetated buffer, so, and they've shrunk their proposal when I first spoke with Jeff, with trustees, in terms of activity in the no disturb zone. So Jeff, with trustees, is here this evening. He's prepared a really nice PowerPoint, and I think I'll hand it over to him, unless you have questions for me.
Right, yeah, so my name is Jeff Denonker. I'm a coastal ecologist with the trustees of reservations. And again, here tonight for the notice of intent for continued habitat management at Wire Hill that falls within the buffer zone of the lake. There's also a small shrub swamp adjacent to the, over by the canoe station near the bridge. And then a small intermittent stream that the forest cutting equipment will cross to get across to the area where they're going to be conducting the work. So in 2019, the trustees were awarded a habitat management grant from the Massachusetts Division of Fish and Wildlife for approximately 31.5 acres of forest management to improve the existing barrens and savanna habitat at Wire Hill. This management is part of the trustees' long-term goal to restore and maintain up to 80 acres of this rare barrens habitat and the associated species, while also reducing the threat from wildfire on the site, and Wire Hill has a long history of burning. So the trustees requested a waiver of a special permit with the planning board last night for work that falls within the Watershed Protection District. That waiver was approved at last night's meeting, and we have also submitted another forest cutting plan with the Department of Conservation and Recreation that the commission also received. So I have prepared a, about a 15-minute presentation just discussing the history of the work, kind of why we're conducting the work, but to be mindful of the Conservation Commission's time, I could, provide, and if they've gotten kind of detailed description of what I have provided with the notice of intent, I could answer more specific questions or focus on some of the more pertinent details, just to be mindful of the time. Sure.
Joe?
So your advantage here is most of us have sat on the commission through that whole process that Amy just brought out, so we're very much aboard with understanding the benefits and whatnot. One thing that's always intrigued me, and maybe you can clarify in these areas, is that sometimes you want an overstory, the shade produced by an overstory to help control purple loosestrife and Phragmites. Do we have any of those invasive species that would otherwise thrive if we take the higher canopy out and burn it off, or are we not taking any of the higher canopy out?
So in the area that's red is where we're going to be doing the canopy thinning work. So, and essentially this canopy thinning, the additional canopy thinning that we're doing is really to get the canopy down to about a 20%. So the understory right now, there's more shade tolerant plants in there, and we're really trying to provide habitat for things like the wild indigo, for the frosted elfin, that we're doing a lot of this management that really need that full sun, and other ericaceous shrubs like blueberries, which really need that full sun. So we're trying to promote the growth of those plants. And amazingly so, most of this restoration area where we have been working is fairly free of invasive species. It's really, there's a small amount of honeysuckle, and then recently buckthorn has been moving into the site. But I think through the combination of fire, mowing, soil conditions on the site, it just hasn't allowed a lot of those species to take off. And so part of what we're including in this notice of intent is to conduct the selective invasive species control, because we're at the point right now where early detection, rapid response is approach to controlling the invasive species is really possible. So we would get ahead on a lot of the species that are present to get ahead of it.
The mowing, actually, there's a good photograph in here. The mowing is, light down crowd, tractor machines, and just leaving all the cuttings right down, behind.
Yep.
Okay. And that's done in conjunction with the control burns, or separate from, or?
So that would be conducted
instead of?
separate from the controlled burns, but kind of the two go hand in hand. So if we let a lot of that vegetation grow up, not only is it harder for us to continuously mow it, but it just creates fuel conditions that fall outside of our burn plan. So we really want to keep on top of that routine mowing.
The thought would be to knock it down first, burn second.
Knock it down first, burn second, or more of kind of like a revolving sort of work. We really want to maintain kind of a matrix of different habitat structure. That's for the wildlife that's dependent upon this habitat. So it would be kind of, essentially mowing would occur when the vegetation is beginning to exceed about 3 feet in height. And then prescribed fire there is a map of the different burn units where that kind of dictate the boundary of where we would prescribe fire when we do conduct the prescribed fire. That would be done on like once every 5 to 7 years in those, like, per burn unit on that site. Ideally, it's just extremely difficult to get prescribed fire due to the windows that we're working with.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Very familiar with the site, and very much in favor of your project. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, I have no question. I think you guys have done a great job out there, so. As long as nothing changes, I'm fine. No questions. Jack?
Good.
Doug?
No questions, except, so if the plan is to mow every 3 years, prescribe fires every 5 to 7 years, are we gonna see you guys before those fire events in the future?
So the hope was for this notice of intent, because everything has been conducted through a forest cutting plan. A lot of that routine maintenance work hasn't made it into that plan, and because this additional round of grant funding is kind of moving our habitat down into those buffer zones, my hope was that this intent would kind of serve as kind of an ongoing ability to conduct that work. I know with a similar notice of intent that I've done for Crane Beach in Ipswich, it was kind of meant to be a management plan that addressed a variety of different activities within the wetland resource area. And then we would essentially provide the Conservation Commission notice when we were gonna conduct things like boardwalk repair, trail movements, but it was all kind of encompassed into the project description. So my hope was that what I've submitted with this notice of intent would essentially function that way. And part of with the waiver that we got from the planning board, part of that waiver of the special permit is gonna require that we notify the planning board whenever we are going to be conducting the ongoing maintenance activities. So I was hoping that, maybe something similar could get written into the orders of conditions underneath this NOI, where the trustees would provide written notification to the conservation when we're suggesting on conducting heavy mowing, prescribed fire, invasive species control, et cetera.
All within 100 feet.
All within the 100 feet, yeah.
And Sean, your concern is expiration of any action of the order that we might issue tonight?
No, just the scope of what we're doing and how, whether or not we were gonna have something like that, some kind of notice come in front of us before events like Burns, et cetera.
Likening it to any other development project, the permit has a life to it, and then a couple of extensions, and it's gone, except the perpetual conditions survive forever. So I think if the perpetual conditions are spelled right out, that obligates them to carry out the O&M plan and to make prior notice at various aspects, I think that's the mechanism that we do to make this last.
That's what I was hoping that the commission would consider, that ongoing conditions with the certificate of compliance would allow for some period of time that makes sense for this type of activity to go on without having to refile every time. And, it's very prescribed in terms of notice, what they're gonna do, staying within the project description.
We do have long-term maintenance plans.
But not for burnings, though. This is the first time, because I know we've had the trustees come in front of us at this property before for burns, but they've always been individual, either filings or RDAs or something, and we've known about them ahead of time. We've had a chance to hear about them, know what kind of conditions were going to exist at the time that the burn was going to take place, and we've signed off on them, I think, independently.
The limits of where the work was were undefined under those circumstances. On a Dunkin' Donuts that requires stormwater maintenance, it's a fixed item that's there year after year, and we obligate them to maintain it and give us proof of maintenance every year. On this, though, obviously, if building a new trail or a new boardwalk wouldn't fall into this separate filing. But these limits, this management area, if you were to stray outside of that, that would also be considered, if similar work, that would also either be considered a modification or a new filing.
Certainly.
But if these limits are what you're talking about forevermore, or at least for the foreseeable long future, then what we're talking about probably works.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Now, that's what I was gonna say, if anything outside that pink line, if we were gonna do anything differently or deviate from the management that I described in the project description, then yes, it would be a new filing.
And typically, what kind of notice do you provide in that situation in Ipswich as far as to the board? Date, length of time?
Email description of the work that we're proposing, and then if they wanted to conduct a site visit, they could. And similar thing with our heritage, the exemption with them as well.
But with fire, obviously, weather's a consideration when the timing of it, correct?
Yeah,
Winds, et
and
cetera.
so with fire, part of our burn prescription, that kind of comprehensive burn plan, we have to provide notice to the Conservation Commission when we're gonna be doing that, regardless.
So Amy, do we have enough information in the NOI in order for us to,
Tons of information, yeah.
so we could issue a decision and make a perpetual condition from what they've submitted?
There's no more question, need a motion.
Are you ready to close?
I'd like, there's so much I want
If you are, I am.
Are you ready?
I'm ready if you are.
I move that we close and issue in 21 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye? Opposed? That's unanimous.
Great.
Thank
Thank you, Jeff.
I know he's full of plethora of information, and we're not getting, he's hearing. Because we got anytime,
You
Chris.
can always give them a call.
Next one is enforcement orders, 537 Boxer Street.
All right, so what's going on? What do we do? Okay, if there's in Boxford, okay. All right, so this is just a progress update. He still has some work to do in terms of wetland marking, but we issued a violation letter for a shed that was built in the 25-foot no disturb zone. We instructed the owner to remove the shed and a play structure, a very small play structure, outside of the 25, but he moved it out of the 50. So we received confirmation that the shed and the play structure have been moved. We asked him to lay down some straw where the shed was, because it was kind of disturbed. So he did that, provided photographic evidence, and so he's made progress. We just need to work on getting the wetland markers installed. So I just want to make sure that you guys knew that we were progressing there, so. And so I'll report back once we get the markers in, and then you could probably lift the enforcement order at that time.
None.
Deb? John?
No, sir.
All right, so you want to continue the enforcement order till when?
March 11th? Yeah.
Need a motion?
Have we ratified the enforcement order?
It's already
You
existing.
did,
I
yeah,
believe.
it's already in place.
It's all
yeah.
ratified, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, all set, thank you.
So we need to get a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you, Amy.
Yes, thanks.
And I'm going to recuse myself for the next two, which is 242-1692, and gladly give the gavel over to the chairman. The vice chairman is now the chairman.
Good evening, everyone. Both of these items come under the same DEP number, 2421692. I know that for your purposes, you have them identified as 1210 and commercial site. I think that goes to one of the enforcement orders we issued. Is that,
So, yeah, so at the last meeting, the commission issued two separate enforcement orders to the same parties. The first enforcement order put all parties on notice that they were equally responsible for compliance with the order of conditions regardless of who's commercial, who's residential, splitting of lots, it didn't really matter. The second enforcement order was issued for implementing an erosion control plan for the commercial part of the site with further amendments that the commission required, and that went out to all parties.
so, with regard to the first enforcement order, the one that was given notice to all parties, is anybody confused by that enforcement order? Is there any need for us to clarify our intention in that enforcement order, or are there any questions with it, or do you get it? I'm hearing an answer in the affirmative. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to accept it as it's offered, that with respect to the enforcement order, talking about responsibilities for the site, that it is acknowledged and understood by the parties.
That what? What's understood? What is it? Doesn't the enforcement order ask for?
What's happened is,
Just what's the specific one?
So there were two
Yep.
enforcement orders. I read them verbatim, and they were exactly as we debated at the last meeting. The first one informed the party that was before us, who was at least discussing the project as a separate project on the same property. The first one, you can read for yourself, basically says exactly that there's one applicant, one property, one order of conditions, and that all parties to the project are subject to the NOI and all prior enforcement orders and all future enforcement orders.
Activities on the site. Regardless of any business agreements between the parties that occur on the site, as far as we're concerned, 2421692 is a site under one, okay.
I just wanted to see if part of that also required that the identification of a specific responsible party or contact person to represent the interest, which it doesn't.
That's a good question, that's a good point. Does that need to be, do we need to have a specific point of contact? Or, Amy, do you need a specific point of contact? Are you satisfied with the contacts you have with respect to the filing?
I mean, I have been, I mean,
There hasn't been any,
there hasn't been an issue in terms of being able to communicate with,
okay,
you know, it's usually a big fat group email anyway.
yep.
You know,
I'm
putting-
envisioning what Sean's
So-
envisioning, and everything's fine until it isn't. And when there's a unforeseen circumstance that we need to consider, that something goes awry and we notify everybody, we want to make sure that we're notifying one party who is conveying the information to everybody. That's not our responsibility. So we don't want to have the burden, and I think it is burdensome, to do everything in duplicate, which is currently what we would be forced to do. Is that the way you interpret it? Or,
Yeah, I mean, it is that. I mean, it's that there is one, the intent of this, is like, when I heard we get it, it's like, well, what did we get? Let me take a look at this again, and I think what we. Right, no, I understand that part. But I think what we were also looking for, which isn't necessarily spelled out in here, is to have one point of contact for us.
You see that on the enforcement order, there's actually two names on it.
So what?
Yep.
One for Geta Farms and one for Princeton.
Yep.
I mean, those are the names that have been on all the enforcement orders.
Right, but we're looking for one, not two.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you could just choose one.
I think that's.
There's been no issues to date. I think Amy can attest that when she sends an email, there's a response, you know, within minutes, if not hours. Or within hours, if not minutes. I think we may be making something out of nothing here. There's been no issues with communication.
I mean, I think with Andrew Chapin and Bob Boland as listed applicants on the notice of intent, it makes sense that they would be
but forces
primary.
us to do it in duplicate or in parallel every single time, because we, and I don't think I'm hearing you say it, I just want to be clear that we're not saying this. If we find a violation on the phase of the single project that happens to be in the commercial site, we're not only notifying one party, if there's a problem there, we're notifying both parties. Or vice versa.
Yep. Yep.
On every.
And then, other than being burdensome or onerous to do it in duplicate every single time in parallel, then I guess that's what it is.
Right, but also, I mean, if somebody would look after the fact down the line and take the position that, you know, although, let's say things don't work out, and there is a separation of these two parties, at that point in time, everybody will look for every excuse they can to not get blamed for what's going on the other person's land. And they're gonna say that, they're gonna say, let me finish, Joe, they're gonna say, this commission has treated it as two separate pieces, because they actually are notifying two separate people for each. So that's what I just don't want, the modes of communication and the way this is being done to ever influence the fact that this is one application, with one parcel, not separated into two. And that, you know, I don't want us to do anything that would alter that appearance.
That's exactly what we're trying to eliminate. So if it creates that cloud, then we want to make sure it gets cleared up.
All right, so I'll ask what I hope to be a simple question. Can the parties submit one name as the point of contact for all parties? Would you be willing to submit one name to us that will be the POC for all parties, everything on that side? Would that satisfy?
That would.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on that issue? Anybody? Go ahead.
So if I were to write correspondence or another enforcement order with a cover letter, do I not bother putting CCs on?
Absolutely, still CC everything.
You
All
can
right,
CC, but
so-
they're gonna be, what council is agreeing to is that they're gonna bear the responsibility for making the notices to all parties on site. That's what I'm hearing. If I'm hearing it wrong, square me away.
I guess I'm confused. If we're still CCing everyone, there's no burden.
Right.
It's just typing a few more
And,
letters.
and honestly, physical paper copies go to the addressed people.
Yeah.
CCs go by email, so email's not burdensome, it's really just two envelopes.
I'm not really talking about a burden, I'm talking
No,
about
okay.
something
Okay.
a little much more formal than
Okay.
what you're doing on site.
They're gonna give us an overall ZA point of contact. That's what they're gonna give us. That's what I heard. And that should, so you'll get the next time you write,
Copy everybody in the world.
Okay,
next time you write a letter, you're just gonna have one.
okay.
That's what I believe is gonna happen.
Well, that, except obviously we have to be aware of any regulations that require the quote applicants unquote to be named, they have got to be included as well. And I assume that maybe one of those applicants may be that person of contact.
I can only hope.
The horse has been beaten. I've beaten the dead horse, that's for
Okay.
sure.
Why don't you, we'll put that discussion aside for a minute, and we'll go to the next discussion, which is same file number, same location, 1210 Osgood Street, but it is work that's being done on what's referred to as the Fujetta parcel, which must be a business relationship or a business agreement between the parties that we just told all the parties has really no concern to us as to separation of church and state. How am I doing so far? Pretty good? All right, so, on our last discussion, we talked about getting a groundwater table map, and test boring log information, which we have. The test boring logs are identified with borings Mike Whiskey 1 through one through 6, and Bravo 1 through whatever it is, 1 through 10. So having those boring logs, we have boring locations. We have boring locations on a groundwater table drawing. Is that accurate?
Correct.
What we don't have on the parcel is, we don't have any data points to show the well locations. There are 5 wells, and unless you've submitted a revised drawing that I haven't received,
I submitted 2 PDFs over to the administrator. One is behind you, the groundwater table, which I believe you had in front of you as well.
yeah, that's this one here.
Yep. The other one is a revised erosion and sediment control plan. There's a revision 3 to that. That was, we had a draft for a while, we finalized it today. That,
If you got it, I got it then, okay, hold on, let me search for it.
the
Is it
monitor. Oh, yes.
Charlie 05 plan, is that?
That's correct.
And is it revision 3? Okay, I do have that. All right, very good.
So the borings and the monitoring wells are on that revision plan.
Okay.
The additional change to that plan is 2 notes that were added under the construction notes. The first note is number 13. It was added at under the direction of the administrator to talk about clean fill that would be used on site and the fill that would be tested beforehand if that were to come up during construction. And the fourth is the 14th note just regards the erosion, the enforcement orders that were recently issued, and just references them in relation to the borings and to the monitoring wells for testing.
Okay, so the plan 05 with the revision 3 has the locations of the 5 well points.
Yeah, the 6 well points, yes.
Okay, we have trending flow data with these blue lines.
That's correct.
With elevations. The question I have, before I let everybody else start asking you questions, have you tested the pH levels yet from anything taken from the wells?
No, they will be tested, I believe, next Monday. We would expect to see results a day or two later.
Okay.
When we receive those results, we'll be passing them on over to Ms. Maxner.
Okay, now on your boring logs, on both sets of boring logs, when you look at the visual identification of soil and rock samples, on the boring logs you have, I'll read just one of them and I'll tell you where my question is. One of them describes brown, dry, dense, coarse to fine sand, trace inorganic silt, and fine gravel, period, parentheses, fill. What is the fill?
That is, what is it in general, or?
No, specifically, what is the fill? In other words, the inorganic silt and fine gravel, parentheses, fill, what is that?
It's what you just read. That is the constituents of the fill that was used in portions of the site.
Is it recycled concrete aggregate?
I cannot speak to that. What I can tell you is that when the monitoring wells are tested, they'll be able to determine if there is any elevated levels of pH or RCA in that
I hear you
material
on the pH, but the question is, what is the fill? I have a hard time believing you can't tell me you don't know.
And that is what we asked for.
And that's not a question that's gonna go away. You did test borings on 16 locations, and all 16 produced
From what I've
those
seen
descriptions.
from these samples when I was out there with them, it did not appear to be RCA fill. So I don't want to say 100% because I'd rather rely on the data we'll get from the monitoring wells to determine that for sure.
Well,
We'll know based on the levels of the pH and the content there. what
The monitoring wells are
constituents
gonna tell us if there's pH or not, but specifically, we
Let
want.
me ask the question a different way, because
Right.
I've done thousands of borings. If you found something that was RCA, it would be reported as such. If but fill is a nondescript description. It's not what you would typically expect to see in a boring. There'd be some description of what that is. Now, it would say aggregates, processed aggregates, it would say borrowed material, a granular, sands in stone. It would have some sort of description to it. But to use the word fill is not definitive, and and it almost is suspect. And I'm not saying that it is, it's just that it's not what we asked for. The whole purpose of doing this was to determine, is there recycled concrete aggregate there or not? And regardless of whether it's there or not, what is the depth, which you've given me the depths of the various horizons that are there. So what they're not doing is telling us whether it's there, of the recycled concrete aggregate or glass aggregate is there or not. That's what they're not doing. And that's what we asked for.
And it's equally important, not just on its face, but because of the relevant data and elevations in the blue lines that shows the trending location of the water. The numbers don't lie. We're going from 158 down to 144. We know where it's going. And it's going exactly where we wouldn't want it to go, based upon the stormwater capture system that's currently designed and wants to be built there. So it's of utmost importance that be specifically defined, the fill that's described in the test boring logs.
What I can do is talk with Soilex Corporation, who did the borings there, to provide a little more detailed information regarding the fill there. It was the understanding that, like you said, Mr. Lynch, that if there was any kind of glass or recycled concrete in there, it would be noted in this report. And it was not, because that was his determination based on the borings that he found. For the few samples that I did see, I concurred. I did not see any of the RCA fill there. But if you want to see it in more of a documented format, I can have them revise this.
Robert, if I could, like Spiel's GI, one thing that might be helpful is if they have any driller's jars or anything like they've kept over from the sample, if they could evaluate that aggregate that is collected as part of that sample and make a determination whether it's a natural aggregate, a stone that was there, or if it's looks like a crushed concrete, that might be a helpful way to look at it.
Okay.
To build on Mr. Manzi's point regarding the placement of the wells, it would be helpful to also have the groundwater contours based on the groundwater elevations added to this plan as well. And I think that might be, Al, not just up on you, but where you're trying to go to get a more conservative look as to the groundwater contours on the plan.
On that
We
vacancy?
good?
No.
He's good.
No, he's
We-
good,
we-
okay.
Or he
You
can
want
sit
to just
up-
jump?
I can pull a chair over here.
Let us,
Okay.
the, while you're setting up a place for Mike to set his, he's got a spot, you got a spot, excellent. So, the other question that needs to be asked, in addition to the direction of the flow, is the temporary sediment basin that is proposed to be built. I guess if you're looking at the property on the left side, the numbers indicate, your numbers indicate the temporary sediment basin at 150 feet, which would put the bottom in the groundwater. Can you explain that, please?
So of course, the intent of the basin and the pond is to be collecting all the water in that one location and to have it tested at that spot. The idea with the nearest soil boring that we have is SB2. And if you can, at SB2, the groundwater elevation is at 143.3. The idea is that with this basin, with the bottom of around 143, the groundwater would be continually moving down at a somewhat continual rate as it goes towards the wetland on the southwest side. So the sediment basin bottom will be above the groundwater level. Therefore, anything flowing into that basin will be the stormwater that is collected from that site, and we should not see any mixing of that area. That being said, if during construction we do encounter that it is indeed hitting the groundwater, we can make adjustments at that time to shift it further down gradient and away from that groundwater level.
To clarify Mr. Manzi's point, where it looked like is from MW1, the depth of ground surface, so that, and that's just outside of the of the basin. It looked like the depth of water indicated that right out, just outside the basin, you might be at that elevation. Is there any concern about that?
I'll have to look at the, what the bottom of that is there. Let's see. What I'm trying to say. The water encountered at the monitoring well 1 is close to about, let's see, yeah, it's about in that vicinity, in the same 143 range there. So
Are you arriving at that?
the monitoring well location is at about elevation 151 or so, maybe 152.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So, and with a 7-foot depth, you're closer to about, I guess, 144, I guess around in that range.
144, okay.
So, given these ranges here, if we find that during the construction of the sediment basin that we're getting close to that groundwater, we can make adjustments. The alternative there is just to lessen the depth of that basin and to expand the area. What we're showing on the site there is one configuration of the sediment basin that can handle that volume that's projected to come during a large-scale storm. But that shape can change as needed. If it's discovered that it's not needed to be as large, it can be reduced. If it needs to be larger, it can be expanded closer to the retaining wall. There's a lot of variability with that. The general location will be correct, but the actual final shape can be dependent on these parameters.
And I'm sorry, I know I asked you and you answered it, but when do we anticipate getting the testing levels, the pH levels on the wells? When do we
Yes,
do that?
the testing should be occurring next Monday, and the results should be done a day or two later. It just depends on when the analysis is complete. To that end, the Diaz Construction is going to be implementing these, constructing these structures on Monday as well. It's anticipated to be about a 4 to 5 day job, but that's also weather permitting.
Which
So,
structures are they gonna?
the swale, the pool, the sediment basin, they'll be installing all these structures starting Monday.
So, with regard to the sediment basin, I mean,
I want to go back to the sediment basin, because
Yeah.
we talked quickly, I should say thoroughly, about soil boring 2, monitoring well 1, did the arithmetic and it made sense. But I'm doing the same arithmetic on monitoring well 2, which is literally just upgrading, almost within that's stilling basin. If monitoring, if the monitoring well ground condition there is just above 148, I'm calling it 148. That's what I'm pulling right off the plan here. And water was encountered at 12 feet. That puts groundwater at 136. Now, you're saying that there's that much of a drop-off between soil boring 2 and monitoring well 2, which is why you think the bottom of that stilling basin is gonna let some water in coming along this diagonal blue line, but not so much the groundwater that's coming out right within the main parking area?
That's right.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, the intent is that with this surface water, you're not going to see a mixing of this with the groundwater there, because there is a somewhat significant drop-off as you go further down into the site. And that's just the natural progression of the groundwater there. So again, if there is any issues with the temporary sediment basin and encountering any potential groundwater there, it can be adjusted to ensure that you're not going to have this mixing here.
so are you locked in on the direction of the water, based on the elevations you have stated in the blue lines?
For the area within those 10 solar borings, yes. Per your suggestion, we'll include the monitoring well information to provide a little more detail as to where it's going. But ultimately, it is draining from the northeast to the southwest towards the basins, going towards the back of the site.
When you say include the monitoring well location, you mean as another graphing point
Correct.
to do, all right.
Yeah, originally, I
Because
was
that would
just-
actually help better demonstrate what I just described.
Yes, it'll show more of a drop-off happening going towards the back of the site and not just going, as it appears, to going from right to left on your sheet.
So you're talking about the trench with the wells, right? You're talking about the trench that's proposed to be built?
Yeah, well,
Erosion control.
there's a vertical difference between those, between that groundwater and where that trench is, because, and with the data from the monitoring wells, that'll help answer that a little better.
I guess my concern is that we capture 100% of the water and it ends up in the right place. And if we find out that the flow is any different than what it appears it might be here, we may not be capturing everything. We could be losing some.
The flow that we're capturing is all surface water. The contours you're seeing there is all groundwater, which we would not be mixing, so there should be no.
You're not concerned about ground flow in this area? In the area from the soil borings from 9 and 10 down to 2? There's certainly underground flow taking place there.
Yes, and that will be tested, but that's not going to be collected by any of these structures here.
if the tests are positive, it will have to then be collected. How do you propose to handle that?
I believe it's already being collected now.
You do?
Sure. Everything that's happening on this site is moving through the site towards the wetlands. So all of the existing infrastructure that's built now to collect and treat it is treating this area as well.
This
That's
area-
just part of the design of the entire site.
So again, I'm trying to visualize it. I think we're getting real close to what we've been asking for all along. I think even if we got groundwater at great depth, that's not getting into the stilling basin. Remember that stilling basin, I'm telling you, it was your stilling basin. It was intended to collect surface runoff and control, siltation control.
Only,
That's
yeah,
its purpose.
that's what it's for.
We also are going to be able to measure pH and turbidity in there as a secondary monitoring benefit.
Yes.
But because of what we're seeing here, this is high enough where we are also going to be able to get some background measurement of pH coming from these regions. The deep stuff, where the monitoring wells says that the groundwater is, just a little further west of the building, is deep enough that it clearly still, we know groundwater's there, it's moving through that horizon, coming to your system. And that's what that system's always gonna do, whether it's, and the only way we're gonna know confirm whether there's any concern with pH or not, is because of testing of the pH within those monitoring wells.
Within the wells, yes. So we'll have the testing within the wells specifically for that groundwater. You can see what's moving from the commercial area to the residential area. And then we'll have testing on the surface, as you said, for ancillary purposes to see if there's any additional.
This is what we've been striving for several months, Mike. I mean, it sounds like we're getting really close to that.
Yes, very close, especially if, as you pointed out, that there's that lower drop in groundwater elevation and things are moving from the northeast to the southwest. That would be indicative that groundwater trending is moving towards the trench system that's installed.
And even the deep water is trending there in.
Correct, that's actually what the deeper
which is what we-
groundwater.
Which is what we
Correct.
wanted to do.
Correct.
So, and then the only other concern would be whether the fill was adding calcite or elevating pH from any other means. And monitoring is gonna help us understand that better.
That's correct.
Yes.
Before it gets all the way down to the system, and even at the system, it's still being monitored.
And captured, correct.
As long as we're captured, I just.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
captured
100%.
one way or another.
Oh, yeah, I'm just not 100% sold on your capture yet. And I appreciate what I'm looking at. I'm just looking at water going in two different directions and eventually wanting to get to that trench and taken down and eventually ended up in a frac tank. I'm just having a hard time visualizing.
In terms of the erosion control plan, is that what you mean?
That part, and the underground flow that appears to be relevant, how's it getting from here to the trench over there?
You're talking, the trench you're talking about there, just so I'm clear, you're not talking about the one on the commercial site, you're talking about the trench behind the retaining wall?
Let's refer to them differently.
Right
So
here.
we have the erosion control trench.
This trench here.
That we've talked about recently, but the treatment trench that you put in months ago.
The interceptor trench.
Interceptor, it's called the interceptor.
This flow, everything up here eventually wants to get to the interceptor. And so I'm trying to visualize and, hoping somebody can help me out here. I'm trying to visualize the connection. I'm looking at the flows on this drawing, and I don't see how they're getting yet. I'm sure that you guys have a plan that I'm just not seeing. And I guess I'll let somebody else ask questions for a minute.
To give you a point of reference for that, if you look at SB 10 on the exhibit that I created.
On this exhibit here?
Yes. You'll see the one that has the groundwater information on there as well. So just on the right side of the sheet, you'll see SB 10 in orange.
Just go ahead, keep
Sure.
going, I'll catch up with you.
So, About 20 or 30 feet, I guess, going towards the top of the sheet, there's a little island right there. That's where monitoring well 6 is. Yeah, so, yeah, thank you for highlighting that area. That's where monitoring well 6 is. Now, it's not on that exhibit, and I'll get it updated so you can see it. Okay, yeah, you can see it on the other erosion.
I have 6 over here.
Correct. So the water encountered there is about 9 feet below the existing grade, existing as it is today. And that existing grade's around 161. That puts,
How are you getting 9 feet? Because I'm looking at soil boring arc, says.
I'm looking at MW6.
MW, so are
Yep.
they, I thought
Oh,
it was
no,
the
not
same
soil.
feet. Are they same soil boring?
There's boring 6 and there's monitoring well 6.
Yeah, so MW6, you're getting water encountered at 9 feet. Is that right?
Yes. Right, so 161 and 9 feet, that means the groundwater level there is at 152. And if you follow these contours, the 152 line is about 100 feet left on the sheet there. It's between SB6 and SB8. So if you imagine that line reaching all the way over to MW10, you can see very quickly that this water is not just traveling right to left on your sheet, but going significantly towards the top of the sheet. And that's progressing towards the existing interceptor trenches on the backside of the site. So unfortunately, some of the groundwater information is a little misleading in that spot. It looks like it's going right to left, but it is actually going more towards the back of the site.
Wells
Will help
will
exemplify that.
will assist with giving us a better understanding of how groundwater might be moving inside.
Groundwater's at 156, and just outside in the parking lot where monitoring well 6 is, it's
around
4 feet
152.
lower.
Yeah.
And it's only 30, 40, 50 feet away.
Right. And that is the general progression as you move back towards the site there because of the natural drop-off that you get.
And some of us who remember what that land looked like when it was a farm, that's exactly how the grade went. It all went in that diagonal corner in more towards the back, which that flattened area sends some more to the back. All right.
That actually begs another question. 2016, there was a report or an analysis that required the removal of fill from the site. Amy, do you have that?
Probably have it electronically.
I know we have it somewhere.
Yeah.
2016 KMM geotechnical report.
That's the report.
Yeah,
So I guess the question I'm asking is, was the soil that was mandated to be removed pursuant to this report, was it ever removed and replaced? Do we know?
I don't have an answer for that.
See, it was,
Yeah.
was not but mandated by us. I don't remember that.
Huh?
You shouldn't.
You can't.
You're recused. You shouldn't.
No, just the history of the film.
You shouldn't.
Okay.
We'll have to figure it
I
out.
told a lawyer on TV once, you shouldn't. I'll have to search for it, and I'll re-ask the question.
I was gonna say to help out, the recommendation was a geotechnical one, for structures, for building of the structures was to remove unsuitable fill for building of foundations.
There wasn't a concern for what the fill was, other than it wasn't structural fill and not adequate for, as.
No, it had to do with the nature of the fill itself, because it wasn't suitable for use for foundations and for general building.
So, do we know? Was it removed, or? I
Don't know, and let me ask you a different way. Why does it matter? I know that sounds crazy
You
coming
know,
from my lips,
you already
right?
know the answer.
Kinda comes sometimes you ask it that way.
You are-
The site had its own geotechnical report for foundations. We've always said that there's obviously foundation work that was done. That's why we thought the moorings was, the answer was out there, we kept saying. So we know that that was done, and something came back with a foundation recommendation based on the soils that were there and were suitable.
Correct.
So whether it was exported from site or moved elsewhere on site, not underneath buildings, I guess we'll never know. But it seems to me in an area where we have these deep cuts up in the northeast corner of the site, you could almost speculate that it was removed because it's such a deep cut.
Yes, right here, the foundation design recommendations that has to do with the structural fill and the recommendation of what should come in and be used. Page 10 and page 11. Okay, I have what I need right now. Want to go down the table, or do you have another question?
Yeah, go around the table.
Deb, would you like to inquire?
I do not have any questions, Steve.
Mr. Maiden?
Just pursuant to your line there, Al, it looks like page 10 says the fill and glacial soils are not suitable, and I think that's, should be replaced with structural fill. Problematic during winter, spring construction.
It has to do with compaction, I believe.
Yeah,
And,
I think that's the fill that Mike was referring to.
Yeah.
Should be used. A clean granular fill conforming to specification table 1 should be used in this regard. So, no other questions.
Yeah, I know what all that says, but I'm not sure, does that weigh into water quality? That's what I'm trying to, because I don't think it does. You want to put your foundation on a good, solid on good, solid soil. If it's not virgin, it's engineered fill, it needs to meet gradation specs, it needs to be compacted, it needs to have a bearing capacity. All that's done analytically. Some soils, when they're imported, are suitable for that purpose. Some are not, and I think this concludes that those soils were not. But I don't think it's speaking at all to whether it's creating some sort of pollution stream. It's not suggesting that at all.
Is the question more about with an extent, depth, breadth of placement of that replacement material?
Yeah, and that's where I was saying
Because that
10 minutes ago, but why
if
does it
was
matter?
removed from the site, that could help us quantify how much replacement fill was brought onto the site, since we've never really been able to get a solid answer on how much came in.
So you're not saying it was up here and got it down and this is where the foundation is now. You're saying that it went deeper and has been brought back up with other materials. Is that what the concern is?
It is, because one of the questions and one of the ways that we can actually try to quantify, if for no other reason, how long we're gonna be doing this, is to know what we have. And I don't think anybody has ever told us exactly how much of RCA was brought onto the site. We just don't know the amount. The quantity's not there. And we, as such, we can't calculate with any certainty how long it's gonna take for this to possibly flush itself out.
Some record of how many truckloads of RCA were brought on site?
If I saw that, I don't remember.
Well, I remember we saw it for crushed glass. That's the reason why I'm asking.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that for the.
I don't know if
for
we
the
have that
glass.
data, because, you know, I'll tell you where I'm going with this. I'm trying to, in my mind, formulate some type of an idea of how long we're gonna be doing this. How long is this thing gonna be pushing out pH levels in the 12 range? And how long is collection and cleaning them and reintroducing them gonna take place? Because it could easily survive the project. This could be going on forever. And if that's the case, we need to have other considerations we have to think about. We have to think about perhaps the sufficiency of the bond we have in place right now. We may not have a sufficient bond. And if we don't have any idea, if we're walking forward half-blind for lack of information, maybe in the best interest of the town and any potential residents here, we might want to consider amending the bond. I'm just putting it out there for discussion, trying to give you a glimpse into where I'm.
We all understand the severity of the potential for impact and the severity of what's already been an impact. But I think if they only provided us what we asked for in these soil borings, we would not have to speculate about an old report from 16, or whether they took stuff out, or whether they brought stuff in. If these borings reported, this is what we found at what depth, this is the material, and this is where the groundwater is, that might be an exact quote from the last meeting, then we would know. Then we would know whether there's RCA in there or not. We don't have that information. And rather than speculating on what it is, demand yet again, we need that information. We've been asking for 3 months, damn near 6 months. We made it crystal clear at the last one. We got results that for whatever reason, soil X is not describing what that fill material is, which is unusual. And we have reason to be suspect. We don't want to be suspicious, but we have reason to be suspect that they're deliberately not telling us. But that's what we asked for, and we don't have it. And if we had it, Al wouldn't be going down this diatribe of trying to resurrect old information from 4 years ago and speculate what was taken out and what other stuff was brought in. You've got the information, give it to us, period.
As I like to say, the science should drive the project. This is the chart. This is the pH chart since October 9th, 2009.
I'm not arguing, but to answer the question, they're just not giving us the information to answer the question. So we gotta assume they got a problem and that it's up here.
I'm gonna,
But who is supposed to be giving us the answer?
The applicant.
the parties.
Okay.
The
So
applicant.
one person has, and so you should you should know that. You should have all that information. And so why aren't you bringing it forward to us?
I believe that the soil borings can be refined a bit to reflect the nature of it being RCA or not. Whether it's just a more apt description. Based on what I saw when I was out there, I did not see RCA in that material. And like Mike mentioned before, there are samples that were taken of all the various levels in all the borings. They can be analyzed and scrutinized and given a more detailed answer to that. So nothing, oh yeah, sure, yes, I will be. Yeah.
Will you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And how long are those samples retained?
They're still being retained by Soil X at this time, so they can be looked at tomorrow.
If not, they can go in and get more. Okay, that's a satisfaction. So,
And I'm raising my voice and it sounds like I'm criticizing you. The truth is, you're trying to wiggle into the anscer that we should have.
I have a way of aggravating.
Don't wiggle into it.
I can't help it sometimes.
Ask for it.
I don't mean to aggravate people, it just happens.
It's natural with us.
It's a gift. Let's go down the table. Anybody else have any other questions, Sean? Michael, do you have anything you want to add to?
I think we've covered.
So, I'll give you the opportunity to close, and then we'll figure out where we go from here. We'll give you a shopping list.
Well, just to summarize,
Yes.
we have the monitoring wells, we have the soil borings. We will refine that information to better explain what is there and what is not there. And when the testing commences, we'll be providing that data over to Ms. Maxner as soon as the results are in. Diaz Construction will be building all the erosion and sediment control structures based on that plan. When the sediment basin is working and collecting the stormwater from the surface, they will be grab samples and testing for that as well. Those results will come in, we'll provide them to Ms. Maxner as well.
Just to restate, or at least try to paraphrase that second enforcement order, we had said that the work to include the borings, the monitoring wells, but you weren't to install any of that other work yet until we got the results back and digested.
Well, that work included the erosion and sediment control measures, that's what we agreed upon.
Okay.
But anything else? no.
Anything else?
Yes.
Still holds,
Correct.
still holds.
But yes to the sediment basin, yes to the pool, the diversion swale, and all that.
Right,
Yes.
you have it correct, you understand it. Amy?
So, I know, Rob, you wanted to touch or discuss the possibility of my being able to sign off on building permits once the erosion control plan has been implemented. I don't know how the commission feels about that,
Building permits for this site here?
for the commercial
still on
one.
hold.
Well, we have a prohibition on
Okay,
it.
okay.
With that
All right.
enforcement order.
Enforcement order
All
hasn't been
right.
satisfied because of the
We're not
results of the
dismissing
board.
that enforcement order.
Inadequate yet.
Under no conditions right now. That's still a valid enforcement order. It hasn't been completely complied with yet, so.
Just a question, would Ms. Maxner be able to make that determination? That it has been satisfied? Once we get all this implemented and testing in and samples sent in, would she be able to make that determination?
No, I think
Extremely capable biologist and environmentalist and understands erosion controls, but I think when we're wrestling these complex issues, even amongst ourselves, we have disagreement. I think we really should be brought back to this commission as a group.
I think.
It's too much burden on
Right now,
you.
today, come back here. At some point, we'll get to a point, I hope, where we can let the administrator make more administrative decisions and,
Okay.
but we
Let
definitely.
me speculate that, if Soils X, reviewing their jobs and their capture horizons where they thought it was appropriate to keep representative samples, if they are going to conclude that there is no RCA in there, I want a certified statement to that effect. I don't want to just realize, I want someone to certify that there is no RCA in this fill material.
They can take additional samples if needed. I mean, the borings are there. I would not object if they needed to take more samples. I'd rather be.
Whatever it takes.
I'd rather have a comfort level with this, so that when you do ask us to satisfy the enforcement order, I want to feel comfortable that we're doing the right thing. That's really what this is, Amy, anything else?
Nope, that's it, thank you.
No questions, concerns? Michael?
Given the spread of the borings and the layout, that drilling program would satisfy me for understanding width, breadth, and extent of fill material. So if they can clarify the aggregate content and what it is, unless they needed to, for whatever the reason, I don't see that more samples would be needed at this time.
Anybody else from the crew? Any questions, comments, concerns? Commission? Are we looking at 2 weeks, or what are we looking at, February 19th or March 11th? We're meeting on the 19th, or we're meeting on the 11th? At your request, we'll honor your request, whatever date you want to come back. Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? There is none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? There is none. We'll see you on the 19th. Thank you. Thank you all. Mr. Chairman, you have it back.
Thanks.
I'm happy to give it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Next one's decision is 1600 Foster. You have that written already? Did I miss it?
She's got it.
Are we there already?
We're there. She's got it.
We're there.
All right.
I can't vote on this one, right?
I can't.
No.
It's all your fault.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have to talk to you after. Again? Getting enough trouble.
Are you chairman, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Let's get it on here.
Come on, let's go.
What's the matter?
Missing, Deb's missing. It's the four of us that can vote on this.
There's only four of us that can vote.
Yeah, we don't, well,
Is Sean?
you don't have to.
Okay, I'm gonna leave, I'll be back. No, I'll leave, I'll
No,
stay.
why don't you wait, because,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So who are the four that are voting?
Us three and Jack.
And us three.
Okay. All right.
So it's Jack, Joe, Al, and Luke.
All right. And Deb, you're an observer.
Yes.
You can ask questions.
I suggested I didn't know if that was a good number or bad number. We'd have to-
I think so. Amy, I don't see any highlights here.
Well, I figured everything's game,
Everything what?
everything's game.
Okay,
So you highlight the whole thing.
I would have highlighted the whole thing.
so that's not good to make everything game.
Let's see.
Is there anything that's not
So
usual?
let's just talk generally about the way the process went. And there was an awful lot of discussion of an awful lot of things that would typically be outside of our jurisdiction. How is it, do we make mention of those in this document, the things that they've agreed to as a measure of protection that we want to make sure is in here, even though it is outside of jurisdiction?
Talking about monitoring wells?
Sort of like a
P-
narrative.
The monitoring, the surface testing, the fact that they were, where the fill is gonna go, all of those things. Just by reference to the plans and the documents, does that do it?
Well, it's a start, but I can absolutely provide a expanded narrative in the findings to detail the fact that we had
And that's what I was thinking,
subcommittee
this almost needs a finding of fact.
meetings. Yes.
Well, I'm looking at
Yep.
condition number 64. And number 64 says, "Water quality in down gradient BVW shall not differ significantly following the completion of the project from pre-development conditions. There shall be no sedimentation into wetlands or bodies from discharging pipes or surface runoff leaving the site." That's a good condition. Would that have been the place to add anything about the monitoring wells that they're putting in, or do
Well,
they
we
need their
have-
own?
We have a condition that speaks to compliance with the pH monitoring protocol.
Which one is that in?
And that is, it's in here somewhere. During construction. 72. I mean, it's short and sweet, but
Yep. So you have a,
Typically, right before the general conditions, you would put a finding of fact.
Yeah, okay.
And I think all of those things that everybody's painstakingly devoted time to, and the applicant
Yep.
worked hard on achieving.
Absolutely.
I think we want to state in there, it becomes part of the order. And
no, I didn't do an expound.
No, but I'm saying, we looked at those today from the ones that, Mr. Howard sent you.
They were,
They were
I
kind of
mean,
general
you know,
guarantees.
condition number 70,
They were guaranteed.
71,
yeah, you got 70, you got 71, you got 72.
number 80. I mean, but, I mean, it's more like a condition as opposed to, here's how we arrived at our decision.
No, there was parts that he agreed to, not use RCA anywhere except inside the foundation, which is, I think.
Yeah, that's part of the record drawing, that's part of the plan.
Well, it,
Oh.
But
what
you-
is-
but
what
you-
is it? Is it the plan set? Because there was so
Yeah.
many subsets that were
a lot of
submitted that I think were very well done and ought to be cited.
I'm sorry, I just want to laugh, I'm reading condition number 94,
Oh, man.
and I just, that's the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. I'm gonna read it out
94?
loud. Mowing of the restored meadow shall take place annually in late winter during the month of March. Good luck finding anybody that'll sit on a tractor in the month of March
month of
to mow
March?
that meadow.
Joe, look at condition 7.
Just saying,
7-0?
right? Counselor, am I right?
Condition-
Placement of RCA shall be strictly limited to the footprint of the proposed warehouse building, foundation.
Well, I think that's a good condition, but what I want to be careful of is that they can survive appeal. One could argue that this work is outside of our jurisdiction, they are appealing condition 70, and I'm not saying that they would. So I think that finding of fact up front says that the applicant
Yeah.
agreed to this and offered this in,
No, you're right.
spell that out
Very good
up front in the finding of fact, and then the conditions survive. I'm good with that.
Bus-
So I will fill in final dates of plans for,
And I don't know, I've got a thick set, but not as thick as that.
Yeah, no, I-
Does that now include, like, the foundation plan and limits of fill? Does that colored drawing, is that part of that set now?
Does that include the, sorry, no more sweat system. Okay, just want to make sure. Because I literally just got handed this
Okay.
at 7 o'clock. So I haven't,
You just reference the Monty Mills?
Yeah.
Whatever the schedule is
We
for
don't need
testing.
to dive through it there. As
Okay.
long as the reference of the plan set is complete, is all we need. And that finding a fact up front, I think, covers it.
yep.
There is no condition 69, so it's gonna have to be renumbered.
Okay. How could that possibly be?
Good catch, Deb.
Oh, you're right. What are you talking about?
I've never noticed that before. Does our order conditions always start with condition number 20?
Yeah,
There are all
it
the
does,
other
it
things-
does. I think it's because it picks up where the WPA
The
form leaves
DEP,
off.
DEP form. and
Yes.
stuff,
So I'll obviously fill that in with narrative.
Condition 48, $50,000 bond.
That's for discussion.
Yeah. We always discuss.
Sound reasonable?
It's a huge project.
Huh?
It's a huge project.
Yeah, you want it
yeah.
more?
Within jurisdiction,
If it was
what
all.
we're getting is pavement taken out and restoration, putting back in. That's really the most of what's happening in that jurisdiction. Is that 50,000 worth? Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
I think it's 50,000.
Okay.
You wanna make it a million?
No, no. Just for discussion, we always discuss the bond.
Any other amendments?
No, just, and what number, do we put for the no fuel storage at all?
It's in
Probably
there.
during construction.
No, that's underground. Oh, sorry. Structural fill, no, structural fill, no.
It's in there.
81.
81? No, yeah, 81.
Amy and I talked about this, so not to allow any fuel storage. You know, for fueling equipment, let a fuel truck come and fuel the equipment. Instead of leaving a 275 gallon tank on a site, God forbid it leaks. And it destroys whatever. So I suggested that we, not allow any outside fuel storage. And have a truck come and fill up the equipment. This way there's no chance of,
And Amy,
A major
after
spill.
98 on the second page, it has 87, so that has to be.
what do you think? Okay. All right, anybody have any questions?
So I'll just make sure that the approved plan list includes all plans submitted.
And any applicable emails that constitute any part of the record.
So we're,
Absolutely.
and we're famous for conditioning pre-construction, post-construction, but we have so many different phases in here.
Phases.
What are the expectations do you want to lay out that for, when do you want to be notified, how often,
Well,
environmental monitor?
Yeah, so what I'd like, what I did for one condition is that before we even step on site, I want SWIP to be provided, 100% construction plans provided with a memo that details any kind of revisions that would impact our conditions in the order. Finalize construction sequence plans, a copy of the order that has the site super's initials on each page, confirming that he's read the entire order. There's probably a couple other things, but have all those things, all those materials in my position, and then we'd literally have a sit-down meeting. Instead of going to the site, we're just gonna sit down and go through all of it with the site contractor, erosion control monitor, applicant, you know, I also included, a condition that requires an LSP to be on site during demo and, remediation activities and activities within the AUL. And then our usual erosion control weekly inspections and reporting.
From what I remember, none of the work areas where we have jurisdiction and where there are erosion controls, nothing warrants work only certain times of the year, dry season. It was all pretty flat and easily protected,
I think so.
right?
I mean, it's,
There's nothing
taken
seasonally
up-
dependent, right?
no,
Okay.
I mean, it's taking up asphalt,
Well,
you know?
how about duration of exposed areas?
Yes, we have that.
We do?
Yes, we do. It's in here somewhere. Yep.
Not the RCA, I'm actually thinking of restoration areas adjacent to wetlands.
Oh.
And, you know, how long should we expect them to be exposed before we either mulch them or apply a tackifier? Should we worry about that more in a fall period coming into winter,
Mhm.
when seed hasn't germinated? You know, those types of things.
Right.
Can-
So if it's at a period of the year where if they throw down seed, it's a waste, so what do we do between that period and when it is a good time, so.
I mean, presumption is
Interim.
the erosion controls are adequate to
Right.
protect it. What you don't want is, you know, it to move in, we're talking large acreage and long reaches. What we don't want is some of that material to move and overburden or overtake the erosion controls. So sometimes you have to, you
Yep.
know, certainly have to hydroseed, sometimes you have to apply a tackifier on steeper
Right.
slopes. So I think it's reasonable to say that, you know, no disturbed, all disturbed areas shall be stabilized. Surface areas which within the jurisdiction shall be stabilized no later than, you know, say November 15th of each construction season. Before that, you can probably get a winter rider, take hold, and after that, you might have to put a tackifier or a straw down. Winter rider works all the time. Yeah, comes up fast.
So condition number 80 has a couple of different ways of saying sort of the same thing, but I just wanted you to look at it.
So I can see it says the same thing as what I was just talking about?
No.
All right, because it
I'm
doesn't.
sorry. No, I just didn't want to forget. I just didn't want to forget.
Okay.
Yep.
Alternative is in italics.
Yep.
We wrote, and that's what we wrote. That's
Just go with
It
our,
does it though, right?
To take what I can get, right?
go with our standard.
No, I don't have any questions. Joe and I were just talking about condition number 80, and I have no objection to condition number 80.
Yeah, but this is,
Keeping 'em both?
it's almost an either or do you want to modify it to make it unified? Do you think it reads straight through?
Not really. I mean, when we get into talking about, you know, particle size and sieve passing, do we necessarily care about that from our perspective, or?
I think the italicized portion speaks for itself, and
Yep.
it's good.
Okay.
And maybe the next continuation begins notwithstanding, semicolon,
Okay.
any imported fill used in connection with this project shall be clean fill. So I think they
Okay.
kind of do go together.
All right. That's a good way to connect, or to.
And also, John, to your point of
Now-
November 15th.
What's that?
In the next, in 82, it said, all disturbed areas have to be, prepped prior to November 1st. Do you want
Yeah, it
November
does say
1st
that.
or the 15th?
I think that November 1st is correct for the looming and seeding, but I think
Yeah.
the November 15th deadline is that if it hasn't germinated and it remains vulnerable, that it needs to be then stabilized, supplemental stabilization.
Okay.
Those dates are pushing the envelope anyway, so.
What would you suggest?
Yeah, actually, 82 doesn't, really, just the way it's written. It does cover it with,
Outside the growing season.
the 30-day
Yeah.
stabilize is what you expect, and then, and then up to the 15th, you have to just stabilize it with some fortified means.
So that include the 15th
Yes.
in that for stabilization?
Jack,
Yeah,
you gonna say
that,
something?
condition 80, that, the sentence additionally, it's like the second sentence in italics.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that is, either could be eliminated or, it seems redundant
Oh, yeah,
with
actually, you're
our,
right.
with our standard
You're right.
condition.
Mm-hmm.
So, I agree, Joe, they do flow together, I think, but it's a little confusing if we leave that sentence in there.
It almost says it twice.
Additional, yep. Okay.
So let's think. So it's neither imported nor structural when we're talking about the permitted RCA. The permitted RCA is going to be the result of crushed concrete from the site.
That's
So
right.
that, this condition does not apply to that material, which
It's-
means it doesn't need to be clean, free of brick and stuff, because by definition, it's going to be crushed concrete.
Yeah, this is imported.
So this
Right,
that doesn't,
imported
this
fill.
condition doesn't preclude the use of that.
Right, right.
Right.
Anything else, Ann?
So I spoke about, invasive species control inside the meadow mix, the restored areas, that, they need to be monitored for invasives and allow for manual removal of them, and report that in terms of species and coverage and,
What condition?
yeah. Is this, it's probably during construction. Yeah, 75. Invasive. And and then 76.
Survivability.
Right, and then invasive species shall be monitored and removed manually upon observation. Detection of invasive species and estimation of their coverage and management of same shall be included in the reports. And then in 76, I talk about methods for more involved management of invasives if it becomes necessary, be discussed with the Conservation Department, and implementation of any non-manual method shall be reviewed and approved by the Conservation Commission or its chair and administrator to determine whether it can be, whether it's a modification or an administrative approval, just to
So
give
the,
some flexibility there.
The risk of inviting invasive species to take hold is that it's only partly an issue with the seed, but mostly an issue with the soil. So, at least that's what I seem to remember. And we have no wetland restoration, we only have buffer zone restoration, correct? And
Right.
there's no harvesting of loam. I can't imagine there's harvesting of loam anywhere on site, so we're actually looking at a net import of loam. As much as we were concerned about other fill materials coming in,
Yeah.
really, it's a concern of invasive species coming in the loam, so
Yep.
I think there needs to be monitoring even in the buffer zone restoration of, the type of plants that are growing up in it. We all know, knotweed in a compost pile becomes knotweed in your buffer zone.
Yeah.
So I guess I think some mention, or maybe you think there's more involved management covers it. But I think some sort of method of monitoring the buffer zone restoration at very early phases to make sure invasive species are not taking hold. I think it's
Yeah.
darn near
Purposeful.
impossible to monitor loom sources nowadays.
Right.
And then in item 73, at the very end, it talks about a special condition. and
Oh,
you-
yeah, I was messing around and I couldn't keep track of which, I was changing and cut and pasting, and so the numbers were changing on me.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure I said I can't forget to put the final number in there, that's
Okay.
all.
Doug, any questions?
He's good. He can't vote either. We can't vote. We lost our right to vote.
Make a motion.
It's like Iowa.
Just like it. Just like
You just like it?
Just
Okay.
like it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Doug and I abstain.
That was to adopt as
And I abstain.
Adopt as amended,
As amended,
correct.
Motion.
All right, signature pages.
Can,
Start right here.
Can I offer a
Yes.
motion to adjourn at this time?
Second.
So moved.
All those
Second.
in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
We're adjourned there, Director.
Thank you.